Chapter 4679. Of course. The celestial being did not decline and nodded in agreement. Seeing that everything had been arranged properly, Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the jade chair. However, he did not meditate. Instead, his mind raced as he recalled what had just happened, as well as what Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji had said, and carefully calculated. Day and night had only alternated several times in the Fortune Palace when Princess Xixia arrived. Xiaohua opened his eyes and cupped his fists towards the celestial being and fellow Taoist Kuang. I'll leave the Fortune Gate's disciples to you two fellow Taoists. Rest assured, fellow Taoists. The celestial being and fellow Taoist Kuang did not get up. They merely smiled and nodded. Xiaohua waved his sleeves and swept Princess Xixia up into the sky, disappearing in an instant. Dozens of days later, on the shore of the West Sea, a faint brilliance flashed in the gloomy sky. Xiaohua's figure appeared in a distorted space. He was not in a hurry to escape from the void. Instead, he first released his divine sense to take a closer look. After seeing clearly, he let out a long sigh of relief and jumped out of the void. He laughed inwardly, "Damn it, I didn't touch the wrong place this time. If I flew the wrong way again, Xixia would laugh at me." As he spoke, Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and released Princess Xixia. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Princess Xixia looked around and did not say anything. She only asked curiously, "Xiaohua, didn't you bring me to the moon-embracing palace? How did you come to the West Sea?" Xiaohua looked helpless and puzzled. "Xixia, I want to ask you, how do you know this is the West Sea? Not the East Sea, North Sea, or South Sea? Why do I think this West Sea is no different from the other three seas?" "Hee, that's too simple. Do you want to know?" Princess Xixia asked with a smile. Xiaohua's head nodded like a chick pecking at rice. He replied repeatedly, Of course. I won't tell you." Princess Xixia covered her mouth and laughed. "All right." Xiaohua scratches his head and says with a smile, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it." "Darling Xiao." Seeing that there was no one beside them, Princess Xixia wasn't that easily embarrassed. She held Xiaohua's right arm and said in a low voice, "Actually, there's no special reason. This concubine has been used to seeing the various territories of the 3 continents and 4 seas since childhood. Whenever I see a scenery, I can roughly judge where it is. If I had known earlier, I would have let you lead the way." Xiaohua smiled as he took out a jade eye and handed it over to Princess Xixia. Darling Xiao doesn't let this concubine lead the way because he cares about this concubine. Princess Xixia was very understanding. This concubine understands very well. Furthermore, this concubine's flying speed is incomparable to Darling Xiao's. Only by arriving here can this concubine share Darling Xiao's burdens. Princess Xixia took the jade eye ring and used her golden eye ring to examine it. Taking advantage of this time, Xiaohua looks at the vast West Sea and says with emotion, "When Fairy Xingyu talked about the moon-embracing palace, I also thought it was some scenic spot in the hidden Immortal continent. It wasn't until Fairy Xingyu gave me the jade eye ring that I knew the moon-embracing palace was in the West Sea. Otherwise, even if we looked for it in the hidden Immortal continent, I'm afraid we would never find it." Of course, female cultivators are meticulous. Princess Xixia returns the jade eye ring to Xiaohua and replies, "Fairy Xingyu doesn't want others to enter her former residence. Naturally, she has to build the moon-embracing palace in a place that others don't know about. Moreover, the hidden Immortal continent is monitored by His Majesty with the clear sky mirror. It's not easy for Fairy Xingyu to build the moon-embracing palace. This West Sea is too big. Not to mention building one moon-embracing palace, even if there are 10 of them, they won't be discovered by others." After saying this, Princess Xixia looks around and urges the cloud under her feet. She pulls Xiaohua and flies towards a place filled with smoke. Princess Xixia's cloud naturally flies very slowly. Although Xiaohua is somewhat anxious, he also knows that he shouldn't rush. He only opens his illusion breaker eyes occasionally and looks at the void on his left. Princess Xixia soon notices Xiaohua's strange behavior and asks in a low voice, "Xiaohua, are you a bit anxious?" Or are you looking for the location of the moon-embracing palace? Xiao Hua nods and replies, to be honest, I'm a bit anxious. I want to quickly find the moon-embracing palace and find the way back to the Dawn Rain continent. However, when he spoke up to hear, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh, and his figure stopped. Sadness appears on his face. Xiao Hua, what's wrong with you? Princess Xixia is alarmed. She hastily holds Xiao Hua's hand and asks in a low voice. Actually, Xiao Hua clenches his teeth and replies, actually, it doesn't matter if we find the moon-embracing palace or not. Why? Princess Xixia is even more puzzled. Didn't you say? You want to find the moon-embracing palace, find the things that Fairy Xingyu left behind and find the way back to the Dawn Rain continent. Then, bring the disciples back to the Dawn Rain continent and get a lot of spiritual herbs. Xiao Hua bites his lips and looks at the gloomy dark clouds. He shakes his head and says, this is just because I can't bear to disappoint the disciples. This is just a very beautiful idea of mine. Or it could be said that this is just me deceiving myself. Because Fairy Xingyu said long ago that there is no spatial meridian that can lead to the Dawn Rain continent from the 3 continents. There is a huge secret behind this. This secret is so big that even she, an immortal, doesn't dare to say it. So, what we are doing now is just a futile effort. An unprecedented war is absolutely unavoidable. And our 3 continents and 4 seas, after the war, the survivors, may not even be 40%. And these are the cultivators with divine abilities. Those powerless common people, ordinary demons and sea race, may be able to survive for a period of time. As he speaks, Xiao Hua points, when I was traveling through the void just now, I saw a lot of strange insects. The void is filled with a world-destroying aura. Even with the strength of the grand ascension stage of the human race, our hearts are trembling with fear. How can the other cultivators resist? Right now, the void can still allow us to pass through, but when the strange insects really attack the 3 continents, all teleportation formations and teleportation won't be able to be used. We basically know that the common people are being attacked, but I'm afraid we won't be able to rush over. I really hate it. My strength has clearly reached the peak of the 3 continents. I can clearly do something for all living beings, but even though I can kill thousands of strange insects, I can't stop this monstrous catastrophe. I've always scoffed at the saying that man can conquer the heavens. I feel that man is insignificant in the world and must comprehend the will of the heavens and the will of the earth. But now, I'd rather man can conquer the heavens. I can kill these world-destroying insects with my own strength. Xiao Hua's words were a bit disordered because his heart was in chaos. Xiao Hua's eyes were a bit moist because his heart was broken. These words didn't contain any heroic words, nor did they contain any ambition. In fact, there was even some dejection, some resentment, and some helplessness. But in Princess Xixia's ears, it was different. At first, Princess Xixia was a bit flustered because she had never seen such a weak side to a supremacy stage cultivator. If even a supremacy stage cultivator lost confidence in the matters of the world, then how could the 3 continents be saved? But seeing Xiao Hua so real and so compassionate in his heart, Princess Xixia's fluster gradually faded. She gazed at this man whose charm came from his heart, whose charm came from his kindness, and her heart was also intoxicated. Some people said that powerful male cultivators were the most favored by female cultivators. Some people said that powerful male cultivators were the most favored by female cultivators. Some people even said that beautiful male cultivators were the most favored by female cultivators. Princess Xixia had seen countless such male cultivators in her life. However, they were all like passers-by in life, floating clouds in the sky. Princess Xixia didn't have any impression of them. Only Xiao Hua, this little monk, left a deep impression in her heart. Sometimes, even Princess Xixia herself didn't know why she was so reluctant to part with Xiao Hua. If it was fate, then it could naturally be explained. If it was interesting, then it could naturally be explained. If it was loneliness, then it could naturally be explained. However, after seeing Xiao Hua, a supreme expert at the peak of the 9th level of origin energy, actually lose his Tao heart for the sake of the survival of the three continents, Princess Xixia finally understood that she had fallen in love with Xiaohua not only because of his humor, his warmth, his gentleness, his kindness, his breadth of mind, and even his pettiness, but because Xiaohua was a cultivator who lived in life. No matter how strong he was still a human. His heart was soft, and he also had perseverance. Only this kind of person could make her heart feel at ease. Xiaohua. Princess Xixia faintly smiled. She let go of Xiaohua's arm, stretched out her arms, and gently said, "Come, let this concubine hug you." Princess Xixia's words caused Xiaohua to be stunned. However, when he looked at Princess Xixia's indescribably beautiful face, as well as those indescribable lines, and saw the affection in her eyes that was as deep as the sea, Xiaohua's heart couldn't help but feel at ease. He closed his eyes, opened his arms, and hugged Princess Xixia. His mouth and nose were immersed in her softness and fragrance. The long-awaited silence came like a tide, making Xiaohua feel like he was falling asleep. Xiaohua. Princess Xixia hugged Xiaohua, stroked his hair, and kissed him on the head with her red lips. She said in a low voice, "You're tired." "Yes, I'm really tired." Xiaohua replied in a low voice, "I'm really too tired." Princess Xixia had already learned a lot of secrets from Xiaohua. However, she still didn't know that ever since Xiaohua was stranded in the three continents, other than the 100 years he spent peacefully cultivating in the West Ocean, he never went into seclusion again. Every day and every night, wasn't he running around for survival and dealing with difficult matters? The tens of thousands of years of cultivation in the heavenly prison, rather than saying that Xiaohua was cultivating, it would be better to say that Xiaohua spurred himself to work hard, to fight against life and death in order to not let himself sink into depression in the darkness of solitude and lose the confidence to live. After that, Xiaohua had never told anyone about all the difficulties he faced. It was rare for him to meet two immortals. The feeling of being a good teacher and helpful friend temporarily made Xiaohua's heart calm down. However, immediately after, he caused trouble in the Immortal Palace, rushed to the end of the world, and besieged the Immortal Town. Until today, although he was finally able to stay with Xixia, the three continents had encountered a strange insect that they couldn't deal with. How could Xiaohua not be tired? Chapter 4680. Xiaohua had seen and experienced the apocalypse in the ruins, and he had also saved the ruins. However, at that time, Xiaohua didn't have much affection for the ruins, and Lehua Heavenly Devil was only one person. However, the apocalypse in the three continents was different. There were simply too many strange insects, and they were simply too powerful. The battle in the Lingyun Side Hall had already shown Xiaohua the tragic fate of the three continents. However, he still wanted to save the people of the three continents with his own strength. Xiaohua was a human Mahayana realm cultivator, and his Tao heart was the strongest in the Taoist sect. However, he had to bear the burden of the billions of people of the three continents, and his Tao heart wasn't enough. He knew that in the long run, his Tao heart might turn into a devil, but if he turned into a devil for the sake of the billions of people of the three continents, what was there to pity? What was there to pity if his Tao heart was shattered for the sake of the people of the three continents? Princess Xixia felt the front of her body heat up. She knew that these were the tears in Xiaohua's eyes. Princess Xixia's nose turned sour for no reason. She put more strength into her arms and hugged Xiaohua's head. She seemed to see the weakness behind a strong man and the dangers behind a grand ascension stage cultivator. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, Princess Xixia whispered, "Xiaohua, take a good rest. Let your heart calm down, let your pace slow down, let me slowly catch up to you. I know I can't do anything for you, and I can't do anything for the people of the three continents. However, don't worry, after you rest, go save the three continents. I will always wait for you, and when you need to rest, come back to me." Xian. Xiaohua whispered, and didn't answer. "I'm here." Princess Xixia whispered and kissed Xiaohua's hair. "I'll always be here with you." That after half a day, the waves of the West Sea were already monstrous, and the sky above the West Sea was already covered in rain. Under a ball of faint light, The pair of lovers hugged each other as if they could last forever. Finally, Xiaohua opened his eyes and whispered, "Exen, Exen, I'm going to save the 3 continents. Let me go first." Princess Xixia replied in a low voice as she let go of Xiaohua's head. The wind quietly blew, causing Princess Xixia's body to feel a bit cold. A feeling of disappointment and frustration attacked her heart. Xiaohua. Princess Xixia was somewhat flustered. She didn't dare to look at Xiaohua. She whispered, "Are you all right?" "Thank you." Xiaohua held Princess Xixia's hand and replied, "With you by my side, how could anything happen to me?" "That's good." Princess Xixia's heart was filled with sweetness, and she also held Xiaohua's hand. After a short while, Princess Xixia said with concern, "Xiaohua, I feel that you're not only mentally exhausted, but also, have you cultivated too quickly, and your Tao heart is somewhat unstable?" Xiaohua smiled slightly and said with a nod, "What you said is right. I'm just too ambitious. I want to do too much. My Tao heart is limited, and that's why it's unstable. However, since I've attained the Buddha fruit of Nanwu Merciful Guanyin Bodhisattva, I'm willing to place all living beings in my Tao heart. For them, I'm willing to break my heart." High in the sky, an indescribable law was born. It was like a thunderbolt, but also like a storm. When the law fell, the wind and rain within 10,000 miles were wiped away. When the law fell into Xiaohua's body, a kind of fluctuation like boiling water was born in the space around Xiaohua. Not good. Xiaohua was startled. He hurriedly used the Fury of Thunder technique and activated the talisman left by Su Ji. Whoosh! A layer of faint silver brilliance was born from the top of Xiaohua's head. It was like flowing water that washed down. When it reached the bottom of Xiaohua's feet, it simultaneously withdrew into Xiaohua's body. The previous phenomenon disappeared in an instant. This is... Princess Xixia naturally didn't know what this law meant. She looked at Xiaohua strangely, waiting for Xiaohua's explanation. However, Xiaohua only smiled slightly and didn't answer. He only looked at the gloomy rain nearby and asked, "I'm done resting. Xixia, accompany me to save the 3 continents." But Princess Xixia didn't ask any more questions. She pulled Xiaohua's hand and flew to a place. The rain stopped, the waves stopped, the clouds dispersed, the sky opened, and the stars also came out. They saw a huge round moon hanging in the sky. Xiaohua and Princess Xixia also stopped. Seeing that there were no reefs in the surroundings, and then looking at the huge round moon above their heads, Xiaohua understood that this must be the location of the moon-embracing palace. Xiaohua raised his hand and pointed at the round moon. He said with a smile, "Xixia, when I heard the name Moon-Embracing Palace, did you think of something?" "What did you think of?" Princess Xixia was startled and asked naturally. She thought that Xiaohua thought of something amazing. However, Xiaohua's answer made Princess Xixia not know whether to laugh or cry. "Doesn't Fairy Xingyu have moon in her name? She and Su Ji are connected by heart. When I heard the name Moon Embracing Palace that day, I immediately thought of Su Ji hugging Fairy Xingyu. Hee, Ode to the Bronze Sparrow Terrace, you know." Princess Xixia's face blushed. She said with a smile, "You male cultivators think dirty. This moon-embracing palace was built by Fairy Xingyu. Even if she has feelings for Senior Su Ji, she can't be so brazen in her name." Who knows? Xiaohua pinched his chin and said with a mischievous smile, "Let's go in and see, won't we know?" Seeing Xiaohua's strange smile, how could Princess Xixia not know what Xiaohua was thinking? She pinched Xiaohua's arm and said reproachfully, "How is that possible? A female immortal's palace." Speaking until here, Princess Xixia understood a little. She said with a smile, "Darling Xiao hasn't entered a female cultivator's palace yet? That's why you're so curious." Xiaohua's face was full of disdain. He said, "I'm already a Mahayana cultivator. What haven't I seen?" Princess Xixia didn't expose Xiaohua and only smiled slightly. Xiaohua flipped his hand and took out one of Fairy Xingyue's tokens. He glanced at it and activated his dermic powers, wanting to activate the restriction. Unfortunately, when his dermic powers entered the token, It was like a clay ox entering the sea. There was no reaction. Damn it, is there a special magic art? Or does it need immortal qi? Xiao Hua was stunned. He rolled his eyes and thought for a moment. It seemed that Fairy Xingyu left in a hurry that day and didn't leave too many instructions. However, after thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua immediately urged the Fury of Thunder. Where the Fury of Thunder fell, the token immediately turned into the shape of a pentagonal star. It flew out from Xiao Hua's hand and rushed into the night sky. Boom! High up in the sky, the full moon that seemed to be within reach suddenly shook violently, and a huge shadow fell down like a giant star. Moreover, the closer the shadow was to Xiao Hua, the smaller it became. However, the pressure it exerted was not small at all. The space within 1,000 li showed signs of collapsing, and even the surface of the sea had a huge crater at this moment. The shadow crashed into the pentagonal star as expected. The star shattered, and the outline of a pentagonal star appeared in the void. However, the outline of the pentagonal star was still sealed. Divine sense and the naked eye couldn't penetrate it. The shadow of the full moon suddenly disappeared. The suppressed waves of the West Sea soared into the sky like a horned dragon, rushing toward the pentagonal void outline. Whoosh! After the waves washed over, a pentagonal void portal appeared from the outline. Inside the portal, a huge full moon also appeared. Let's go! Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He pulled Princess Zixia's hand and floated into the portal. Xiao Hua's figure fell into the portal. Without waiting for him to speak, Princess Zixia beside him cried out happily, Xiao Hua, are you sure? This is the moon-embracing palace? Inside the portal, it wasn't a simple space. It was a beach by the sea. The fine, soft, and even somewhat white sand was under Xiao Hua's feet. When he stepped on it, he left behind a pair of footprints. Far away from the fine white sand, layers of blue waves were surging towards Xiao Hua like a rising tide. In front of the head of the tide, bubbles mixed with strange seaweed landed on the beach. The sea surface inside the portal was different from the West Sea. There weren't any strong winds or waves. There were only fine ripples. In the distance between the sea and the sky, the sea surface was as tranquil as a woman's eyelashes. On the other side of the beach, there was a bunch of flowers piled up by the sea sand. This bunch of flowers was at least 1,000 zhang in size. There were more than 100 flowers. The roots of all the flowers were inserted into the beach, and the blooming flower buds were blooming in midair. In each flower bud, there was a strange palace hall. And these palace halls were also piled up by the sea sand. The full moon was hanging in the sky. Its splendor was like water. It shone on the beach, sprinkled on the flowers, and even sprinkled on the 100 palace halls. Under the clear moonlight, it seemed as if the sand in the sea was sparkling. No matter if it was the flowers or the palace halls, they all gave birth to a kind of strange beauty. Looking at the casually piled up palace halls that looked like children playing on the beach, Xiao Hua touched his nose. He used his finger to point at the 3 big words protruding from the flowers. He smiled bitterly and said, I can be sure that this is the moon-embracing palace. Princess Zixia laughed loudly. She pulled her hand out of Xiao Hua's hand and happily jumped around on the beach. She was like a little girl who had been freed from her restraints. She was wantonly indulging in her own laughter on the beach. Chapter 4681. Looking at Princess Zixia's laughter, Xiao Hua's heavy heart relaxed for no reason. He smiled and slowly walked behind Princess Zixia. On the beach, among Princess Zixia's messy footprints, there were 2 lines of firm footprints that accompanied her all the way to the front of the bouquet. Princess Zixia listened and looked at the huge bouquet. She smiled and said, Xiao Hua, do you know? When I was young, I often played beside the heavenly river. Occasionally, I would use star sand to build a small house. I even begged Mother to build a palace with sand for me to live in. I remember very clearly that Imperial Mother had promised. However, before Mother could use her divine ability to build it, I had already started the most basic cultivation. After that, I never went to the heavenly river to play again. That little house made of sand was also left in my dreams. Today, After seeing this moon-embracing palace, I finally know that I was not the only one who had such a beautiful dream when I was young. Fairy Xingyu and even more female cultivators also had such a beautiful dream. Yes. Xiaohua smiled and said, I also didn't expect the moon-embracing palace to be like this. Xinxin, if you like it, I'll give you this moon-embracing palace. Since you control Star-Picking Tower, I'll give you this moon-embracing palace. No, I don't want this. Princess Zixia smiled and shook her head. Although I had the same dream as Fairy Xingyu. This is her dream, not mine. The palace I want. You should be the one to build it for me, right? Moreover, this moon-embracing palace contains Fairy Xingyu's thoughts. It can be considered her secret. Unlike Star-Picking Tower, other than Fairy Xingyu, no one is qualified to own this moon-embracing palace. You can't and I can't. Presumably, this is also the reason why Fairy Xingyu gave you the secret of the moon-embracing palace in the end. Therefore, I think that after we find something useful in the moon-embracing palace, we should leave this place and seal it off. Don't let anyone come in again. Xiaohua clapped his hands and said with a smile, Xinxin, you're right. This is Fairy Xingyu's palace. After she left, she didn't plan to let anyone else in. It's good that you and I can come here. After we leave, we'll seal it off and don't let anyone disturb the peace here. If you like it, I'll build a sand palace for you in the Kunlun Wonderland. Great, great. Princess Zixia clapped with a smile. She took Xiaohua's hand and flew into the moon-embracing palace. Similar to what Xiaohua thought, the first palace they entered was empty. The moon palace was empty. Fairy Xingyu believed in Su Ji's divination skills very much. She had the idea of never returning after entering the moon palace. Therefore, when she left, she made sufficient preparations and took away everything that could be used. She did not leave anything special behind. Fairy Xingyu didn't say anything about the Dawn Rain continent. Xiaohua didn't know whether it was the Jade Eyes or something else. Therefore, although he saw that the palace was empty, he didn't dare to neglect it. Every time he passed by a palace, he used his naked eyes, divine thoughts and Dharma eyes to check it out. Princess Zixia also activated her golden eyes to help Xiaohua. After looking at more than a dozen palaces in a row, they didn't find anything. Princess Zixia couldn't help but frown and say, Xiaohua, it seems that Fairy Xingyu took everything she could. Where are the clues she left behind? Xiaohua was also a little anxious. After all, what he was looking for was the secret of the immortal realm. Even Fairy Xingyu didn't dare to say it out loud. Who knew where she would leave the clues? During this time, Xiaohua was also guessing in his heart. Since it was so secretive, why would Fairy Xingyu leave clues in the moon-embracing palace? He thought of a lot of possibilities. At first, he thought that Fairy Xingyu might have left the clues for him. However, at that time, Fairy Xingyu didn't know that he came from the Dawn Rain continent and didn't know him. It was impossible for her to leave such a clue for him in advance. Later, Xiaohua felt that Fairy Xingyu was deliberately showing off and wanted to leave some secrets in the moon-embracing palace. However, he laughed at himself first. Fairy Xingyu was not an ordinary female immortal, nor was she a young girl who was ignorant of the world. How could she show off? How could she leave something that could be used against Fairy Xingyu in the 3 continents? Xiaohua couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it, which made Xiaohua have no idea where the clues were. He could only search inch by inch. Since the moon-embracing palace was the work of an immortal, there were many strange restrictions in many places. Xiaohua's divine thoughts couldn't reach far, and his delusion breaker Dharma eyes could only see a space of about 100 feet. This slowed down Xiaohua's search speed. Hearing Princess Zixia's question, Xiaohua closed his delusion breaker Dharma eyes and rested for a moment. He answered, yes, when Fairy Xingyu left that day, she didn't think of coming back. Of course, she took as much as she could. But what's this? As the two of them talked, they came to another hall. Xiaohua's gaze swept around and immediately fell on a table. There was a green jade paperweight that was more than an inch long on the table. Xiaohua asked in surprise. He raised his hand and took the paperweight in his hand. The paperweight was very heavy in his hand. Obviously, it was not an ordinary item. Xiao Hua hurriedly used his divine thoughts and Dharma eyes to examine it. Unfortunately, a moment later, he was disappointed again. He handed the paperweight to Princess Zixia and whispered, "Zixia, help me take a look." At Princess Zixia took it and looked at it for a moment. She smiled bitterly and said, "I can't see anything. It seems to be a paperweight." Xiao Hua said helplessly and looked away. At this time, there were more things left in this hall. In addition to the paperweight, there were also jade cups, jade plates, and other things that after looking through all the things here, Xiao Hua entered another hall with disappointment. As they went deeper, more things were left behind in the hall. The two of them slowed down again. After a few days, Xiao Hua and Princess Zixia finally arrived in front of a sealed hall. Looking at the thick fog in front of the hall door, Xiao Hua's heart thumped wildly. Xiao Hua and Princess Zixia looked at each other. Xiao Hua took out the token again. This time, Fairy Xingyu's token did not produce any special changes. It was only a fist-sized star that rushed into the fog, and the hall door slowly opened. Hiss! Xiao Hua's divine thoughts swept over and he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He said in surprise, "This is Xingyu's Hall of Heroes. Ha, Fairy Xing, you put all the heroes of Zhai Xinglu here." Princess Zixia looked around and saw that under the starry sky, every sculpture was emitting a valiant aura, just like their exciting lives. She couldn't help but smile and say, "If Xiao Hua wants to find any clues, I'm afraid it can only be found here." Xiao Hua nodded. "Yes, it should be so. This Hall of Heroes contains everything about the 3 continents that Fairy Xingyu searched for. What she wants to tell me must be hidden behind these sculptures." Princess Zixia wanted to explore separately with Xiao Hua to improve the efficiency of the search, but she knew that even after she searched, if Xiao Hua couldn't find it, he would definitely search again. She didn't discuss any strategy with Xiao Hua. Her figure flashed, and she rushed into the Hall of Heroes with Xiao Hua. They landed in a paradise, and she casually summoned a hero's book and slowly looked through it. Seeing that Princess Zixia was so considerate, Xiao Hua couldn't help but sigh with emotion. He thought to himself, compared to flowers, compared to jade, this Xiao Hua is lucky to have such a woman by my side. Xiao Hua looked through the hero's book in a different way from Princess Zixia. He wasn't in a hurry to pick up the jade eyes. Instead, he released his divine thoughts and roughly looked through the entire Hall of Heroes. The Hall of Heroes here was more than 100 times larger than the Hall of Heroes in the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realms star-picking tower. The number of sculptures and jade eyes inside was more than 100 times more. Moreover, there were many strange sculptures and jade eyes outside the borders of the 3 continents and 4 seas. Xiao Hua restrained his impulse to directly pick up those jade eyes. He sat down cross-legged, and with his palms facing the sky, he formed a karma seal with his hands. Obscure, profound and strange karma hand phantoms rushed out of his body and landed in various parts of the Hall of Heroes like the thousand-hand guanin. As the karma hand covered the area, countless streams of light appeared in the countless jade eyes. These streams of light flew into the air and formed a faintly discernible river of karma. As the river flowed, Princess Zixia's inspection of the jade eyes gradually slowed down until it finally stopped. The river of karma didn't have a source, and there was no end to where the river of karma went. However, as the river of karma flowed through the space where Xiao Hua was, everything in it was clear and orderly. After an unknown period of time, the river of karma suddenly trembled and collapsed into fragments that fell into different jade eyes. At the same time, Princess Zixia's still figure moved slightly, and everything returned to normal. She continued to inspect as if nothing had happened. When she looked at Xiao Hua again, his eyelashes fluttered above his tightly shut eyes. His eyes slowly opened, and they were filled with disappointment and confusion. That's strange. Xiao Hua looked at the sculpture to his left, inwardly puzzled. This Xiao used the Hand of Karma, bringing all of the Heroes' Pavilion's Book of Heroes into the River of Karma. Although it can't be said that everything is covered, the karma within is clear. But in this karma, why don't I see the information about the realm that Fairy Xingyu mentioned? Could it be that the information about the Dawn Rain continent isn't in the Hall of Heroes? Xiao Hua muttered in his heart. His figure moved again. He raised his hand, and a dozen jade eyes on his left fell into his hand. Then he placed them on his forehead one by one to inspect them. Of course, Xiaohua's inspection this time was much more detailed. There were many details in the jade eyes, and he didn't miss a single word. However, he still didn't find anything. Chapter 4682. However, several months later, when Xiaohua put down the last jade eye, he looked at Princess Wuxia, whose eyes were still flashing with a faint golden light. Xiaohua opened his mouth and said, "Wuxia." "Oh, Xiaohua? What did you find?" Princess Wuxia asked hurriedly. Xiaohua didn't answer, but asked, "How many times have you done it?" Princess Wuxia was slightly stunned, and then said, "The third time." "Did you find anything?" "Not yet." Princess Wuxia forced a smile and said, "But it doesn't matter, I'll look again. Maybe I didn't look carefully the first 2 times and missed some places." "Put it down first." Xiaohua sighed and said, "I think the information that Fairy Xingyu wants to say might not be in this Hall of Heroes." But Princess Wuxia didn't put down the jade eye, she just closed her golden eye and rested for a while. She asked curiously, "The Hall of Heroes is where all the information about the 3 continents is recorded. According to common sense, the information about the 3 continents must be here. But the problem is that this information is very secretive and important. Even someone as strong as Fairy Xingyu doesn't dare to say it to me face to face. In that case, she can't brazenly put it in the Hall of Heroes." "Not necessarily. What is true is false, and what is false is true. Maybe there is some information hidden in a word or sentence." Princess Wuxia objected. "At first, I thought so too, so I didn't dare to use any divine ability. I only used the clear eyes technique and divine thought to look at the jade eye in the Hall of Heroes twice. I am sure that I didn't miss a single word, but I didn't find anything at all." Princess Wuxia nodded and said, "Then what do you mean?" "Put down the Book of Heroes in the Hall of Heroes first." Xiaohua bit his lips and said, "Let's go look at the other places in the moon-embracing palace." Princess Wuxia put the jade eye in her hand back and flew out of the Hall of Heroes with Xiaohua. Outside the Hall of Heroes, there was a rather large hall with some bookshelves and some chairs. The bookshelves were also empty, without any jade eye. Xiaohua habitually released his divine thought to look at the bookshelves first, and Princess Wuxia also flew towards the chairs in the distance. After the Hall of Heroes, Xiaohua and Princess Wuxia's search speed increased once again. They passed through one palace hall after another and gradually approached the center of the moon-embracing palace. On this day, as they walked out of the palace, they were greeted by an extremely large garden. The garden was filled with a strange fragrance, and there were many strange flowers and plants growing all over the garden. In the middle of all these flowers, there was a strange pavilion that entered Xiaohua and Princess Wuxia's eyes. This pavilion was like a hammer, but also like a flower. When Xiaohua looked at it carefully, it looked like a jade cup. The full moon that was previously hanging on the beach was now visible, as if it was above the pavilion. When Xiaohua got closer, the pavilion actually looked like a large hand plucking the full moon from the sky. "Moon-embracing palace." Xiaohua cried out involuntarily. "Wuxia, this is the true moon-embracing palace." "Not bad." Princess Wuxia nodded and agreed. "I've already roughly looked through all the flowers in the garden. There's nothing special about them. Most of these flowers were from the 3 continents, but a small portion of them were from the outer realm. Furthermore, these flowers are pure flowers, not some rare spiritual flowers." "Good. Thank you for your hard work." Xiaohua smiled and nodded. When he saw the moon-embracing palace, he already had a feeling that the secret he was looking for should be inside. Then, Xiaohua urged his figure and flew towards the pavilion. Unfortunately, after flying for half a cup of tea's time, Xiaohua passed by layers of flowers, but the pavilion in front of him was still just a pavilion. He couldn't get close at all. Although Xiaohua's divine sense didn't detect any abnormalities, how could he not understand that this must be Fairy Xingyu's method? Xiaohua stopped and took out Goddess Xingyu's token. Under the activation of the Fury of Thunder, another star flew out. However, to Xiaohua's surprise, the star fell into the void. Waves of ripples appeared out of thin air, washing the space where the pavilion was. Xiaohua tried a few more times, but he still couldn't get close to it. Damn it! Xiaohua's eyes turned rapidly, and he turned to Princess Zixia and said, "Wait here for a moment, watch my method." But Princess Zixia nodded and stopped. Rumble! Xiaohua urged the thunder escape, and lightning flashed around his body. His figure rushed into the void like lightning. When the thunder escape reached its limit, the pavilion in the distance began to shake. Layers of phantoms were born under the moonlight, and they crashed into Xiaohua's phantoms like water. Moreover, every time there was a collision, a strange ripple would be set off in the space. Open! When Xiaohua felt that the space was as hard as a cliff, he roared again and urged the thunder technique again. An abnormally twisted big hand crazily grabbed at the ripples and the moonlight phantoms in front of him. Where the big hand of thunder landed, a deafening sound was heard. It was as if the Milky Way had suddenly burst, and the ripples were shattered. Countless beams of light from the stars and the moon turned into waves and fell out of the sky, rushing to the top of Xiaohua's head and turning into a fist-sized lock. The lock rotated rapidly, and a destructive force was born from the lock. Xiaohua had no choice. He only had the token given to him by Fairy Xingyu in his hand, and he didn't even think about it before throwing it into the lock. Gotcha! As the token fell, the lock opened and turned into two colorful phoenixes that flew up. At the same time, the wings of the phoenixes immediately gave off a myriad of multicolored lights. The abnormality caused by Xiaohua's escape was immediately smoothed out, and Xiaohua's figure also stopped. Woo-woo! Wherever the light passed, the entire garden would be swept up by a hurricane. One after another, delicate flowers would be swept up by the hurricane and fall into the wings of the colorful phoenixes. Only after the flowers were destroyed did the colorful phoenixes let out a clear cry and rush back into the pavilions. Clang! With a soft sound, the two small doors of the pavilion opened, and a ray of moonlight came out from the small doors and fell at Xiaohua's feet. Let's go! Xiaohua turned his head and waved at Princess Zixia. Then, he urged his figure to fly toward the pavilion. However, he only flew for a moment before he found something strange. He thought that Princess Zixia, who was behind him, didn't follow him at all. Moreover, when Xiaohua took a closer look, he found that Princess Zixia was simply standing there, looking at him with concern. Her eyes didn't even move. Xiaohua pondered for a moment. He knew that this was Fairy Xingyu's confinement. Most likely, only people with the token could enter this pavilion. Therefore, he didn't force his way through the confinement and urged his figure to enter the pavilion. The pavilion wasn't as big as it looked from the outside, and the layout inside was also simple. Other than a jade bed that was dozens of feet in size placed in the center like a bed, there was a jade table and two jade chairs placed casually beside the jade table. There was nothing else. However, on the other side of the jade bed, there was a door that was the size of a person. The sound of waves came from there. Xiaohua didn't dare to be careless. He opened his delusion breaker eye and looked at the jade table, and the jade chairs. He even looked at the space below the jade again and again, for fear that he would miss an entrance like the one in the legacy realm. After looking around, Xiaohua didn't find anything strange. He looked at the other spaces in the pavilion, and finally his gaze fell on the door. There was a strange restriction on the door. His divine sense couldn't penetrate it, but he could hear the sound of waves. When Xiaohua walked to the door, he looked up and down. When he lifted his foot, to his surprise, his figure easily passed through the door. Outside the door, there seemed to be a space extended out from the pavilion. As soon as Xiaohua came out of the space, he could see fine white sand as well as the boundless sea. However, before Xiaohua could stand still, his body shook violently, and a bone-chilling feeling immediately emerged from the bottom of his heart. Ha! A string of bell-like sounds came from the beach in the distance. Wasn't that Princess Zixia's laughter? Xiaohua stood there in a daze as he stared into the distance. The graceful Princess Zixia was currently pulling her hand out of the other Xiaohua's hand and happily jumping around on the beach, as if she was a little girl who had broken free from her restraints. The other Xiaohua had a smile on his face as he slowly walked behind Princess Zixia. On the beach, Among the messy footprints of Princess Xia, there were 2 lines of firm footprints that looked very clear. Heaven of transformation. Illusion. Xiaohua couldn't help but think of the illusion Star Moon Palace in the ruins. His slightly frightened eyes suddenly flashed with 2 strings of scarlet flames. However, just as the scarlet flames flashed in his eyes, the illusion on the beach disappeared again. Another Princess Xia and another Xiaohua disappeared at the same time. Only 2 rows of messy footprints were left on the beach. 2 pairs of firm footprints were left on the beach. Xiaohua was stunned. He focused his eyes again and released his divine sense. Sure enough, the beach was still the same beach and the sea breeze was still the same sea breeze. There were no more 2 people. Phew! Xiaohua let out a sigh of relief. He lowered his head and looked around. He saw that he was on a platform with a praying mat on it. On one side of the praying mat was a book. This book was different from the books Xiaohua had seen before. It looked extremely old. Xiaohua didn't rashly pick up the praying mat and book. Instead, he opened his delusion breaker eye. However, Xiaohua was disappointed after a short moment. Because the praying mat still had some brilliance like silk, the book simply couldn't be seen with his delusion breaker eye. In other words, this book was an ordinary item. Xiaohua picked up the praying mat and carefully looked at it. Soon after, he raised his hand and was about to pick up the book again. However, at this time, there was another sound of laughter. Xiaohua raised his head. Sure enough, the illusion from before was born again. Chapter 4683. This time, Xiaohua did not deliberately disturb the illusion. Instead, he pinched his chin and looked into the distance, quietly waiting for the illusion to develop. The illusion did not last long. When Xiaohua and Princess Xia walked to the bouquet, the illusion ended. The entire beach returned to its original calm state. I understand now. Xiaohua looked at all this thoughtfully. Fairy Xingyu must have missed Su Ji, so she set up an illusion here to record the scene of Su Ji coming to the moon embracing palace. When Fairy Xingyu missed him, she would come and take a look. No wonder Fairy Xingyu didn't want to give the moon embracing palace to me. This contains the feelings of a girl. How could she be embarrassed to let others know? These feelings are the proof of time. Fairy Xingyu couldn't bear to destroy them, so she left them here. If I hadn't helped Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji fulfill their long-cherished wish, how could Fairy Xingyu have let them in? If that's the case, what is recorded in this book? Thinking about this, Xiaohua raised his hand to take the book. When his fingers touched the book, a corner of the book turned into ashes with a whoosh. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. His hand stopped and he cried out in disbelief. This is a book? Used by the secular world? The moon embracing palace was built by immortals. Xiaohua would not be surprised to see any strange things in it. However, on this platform where Fairy Xingyu missed Su Ji, there was a book used by the secular people. Moreover, it was a book from who knew how many years ago. A book that had turned into ashes and would disappear with a touch. How could Xiaohua not be surprised? Suddenly, Xiaohua quivered. His tenacious Dao heart could not help but tremble. He finally understood what Fairy Xingyu meant. If there was no accident, the secret of the 3 continents was in this book that had turned into ashes. The secret that even Fairy Xingyu did not dare to reveal must have been recorded in the scroll for some reason that Xiaohua did not know. Since the scroll had already turned into ashes, Fairy Xingyu did not destroy it. Of course, there were other things recorded in the scroll that Fairy Xingyu could not bear to destroy with her own hands. Instead, she made use of the power of time to make everything disappear. In particular, Fairy Xingyu had said clearly that it would depend on Xiaohua's luck and magical power. If Xiaohua had used his Dharma power to pick up the scroll like he had picked up the futon, then the scroll would have been completely turned into ashes. Xiaohua would not have been able to explore the secrets inside. But even so, the entire scroll had already turned into ashes. How could Xiaohua see what was inside? Xiaohua held his breath and slowly retreated. Once he was some distance away from the scroll, his mind raced as he searched for a spell that he could use. However, after the time it took to drink a cup of tea had passed, Xiaohua's forehead began to sweat. It seemed to be a simple matter, but he didn't have the slightest clue. Moreover, he knew that since Fairy Xingyu had dared to leave the scroll here, she must have understood that if she was not proficient in the law of time and could reverse the flow of time on the scroll, who could restore a scroll from tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago to its original state. What should I do? What should I do? Xiao Hua was burning with anxiety, his eyes fixed on the decayed scroll. Suddenly, Xiao Hua raised his hand and hit his forehead. He cried out inwardly, "Damn it, why am I so stupid? I can't do anything to this scroll if I leave it here. If I get it to Shenhua continent, I'll do whatever I want." Whoosh! Just as Xiao Hua was getting excited, his action brought about a gust of wind. Some debris fell from the scroll again. Damn it! Xiao Hua cursed and hurriedly released his mind. He carefully rolled up the pile of decayed fragments and sent them into the space. Then, Xiao Hua's mind also entered the space. Xiao Hua turned into Jade Archive Xiao Hua and sat cross-legged in the space. At this time, the scroll was not in Shenhua continent, nor was it in the spiritual realm. It was not in any of the other spaces that had yet to take shape. Jade Archive Xiao Hua raised his hand and pointed. His index finger was about to produce a dazzling light, but he stopped in an instant. He pinched his chin and whispered, "In this space, I'm close to a god, but it's still impossible for me to reverse the flow of time." Moreover, what Xiao Hua wanted to know was what was recorded in the scroll. He did not necessarily have to restore it. In the space, this scroll has already decayed. Any magic spell or even a wisp of wind can destroy it. But in the space, I can make it as hard as iron. Even a magic spell won't damage it, so why would I need to make such a big fuss? Thinking about this, Jade Archive Xiao Hua gently raised his hands and placed them on the decayed scroll. As his palms closed, a purple mist appeared in his eyes. Ancient characters were reflected in his eyes. Yen Province's strange spirits. Jade Archive Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. With a thought, another book appeared out of thin air. Wasn't it the other, Gone Province's strange spirits? Immediately, Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked at the decayed, Gone Province's strange spirits, while slowly opening the other book to compare. The so-called Records of the Ghosts and Monsters of Gone Province was nothing more than a collection of stories about ghosts and monsters passed down by word of mouth in Gone Province. They might have something to do with Taoism, Confucianism, or some ghosts and monsters. It was impossible to verify whether they were true or false. Moreover, this book was for people to use in their leisure time. It had no value at all. Xiao Hua read more than half of it. Although the things inside were somewhat different from the ones in his hands, most of them were similar. The reason for the changes could only be because of the passage of time and the changes in the records. Seeing that he had reached the last page of Gone Province's Strange Spirits, Jade Archive Xiao Hua suddenly stopped. This was because at the end of the decayed book, there were some small words written with an ink brush. Wasn't it left behind by Fairy Xingyu? Jade Archive Xiao Hua took a deep breath, and his eyes flickered with extraordinary splendor. He read word by word. Moon Embracing Palace has already begun to take shape, and Su Ji has placed his mind on finding clues to return. He would go out from time to time, and I would use my divine arts to investigate when I was bored to death. However, I still underestimated the power of that book Immortal. This divine ability actually backfired, causing me to instantly go berserk when I obtained a great secret. My body couldn't move. Su Ji returned and helped me heal. He also took out this Gone Province's Strange Spirits, saying that he was afraid that I would be lonely, and then bought it with 4 copper coins. I felt sweet in my heart and asked him to read it for me. This was originally an unreasonable request, but he really agreed. There were 47 stories in the book, and he read one story every day for 47 days. After 47 days, my injuries were much better and I could move again. Only then did he feel relieved and leave. I flipped through the book and sighed. If he didn't have me in his heart, how could he be so patient to accompany me? But if he had me in his heart, why couldn't he? Say it? He read 47 stories for me. Today, I will also write a story for him, a story that he has never heard before. A long, long time ago, There was a big mountain in the east of Gan province. A group of people lived on the mountain. These people practiced magic and were very powerful. They had the ability to move mountains and fill seas. At the foot of the mountain, there were 6 tribes. The people of these 6 tribes were very ignorant. Not only did they not know how to cultivate, but even their lives were very difficult. Often, they did not have enough clothes to cover their bodies and food to fill their stomachs. Later, the people on the mountain occasionally saw the difficulties of these tribes and casually taught them some life skills, such as farming, fishing, hunting, etc., so that they could have the ability to survive. After a long time, some people in these tribes became ambitious and began to enslave others in order to obtain more food. However, after they controlled the entire tribe, they discovered other tribes. Thus, the tribes began to kill each other. The originally peaceful lives were disrupted. Every day, they could hear wails and cries of pain. The killing became more and more widespread. In the end, all 6 tribes at the foot of the mountain participated. Some people began to have ulterior motives, and some tribes formed an alliance to fight against other powerful tribes. The sound of killing and the smell of blood spread to the top of the mountain and affected the people's cultivation. They were very curious as to what had happened. However, when they found the reason, they were helpless. They did not know why a good thing had turned into a bad thing. Although they were very powerful, they could not change the greed of these tribes. Moreover, they also knew that if there was no good solution, these tribes would be destroyed in the end. In the end, someone came up with a solution that was not really a solution, which was to dig 5 extremely deep abysses between the 6 tribes so that the 6 tribes could not kill each other. After the abysses were dug, the 6 tribes could no longer kill each other. Moreover, as time passed, the 6 tribes had forgotten the past and thought that they were the only tribes at the foot of the mountain, and that there were only as many tribes at the foot of the mountain. I don't know if Suji will like this story. However, he is so dull that he will definitely just nod. Alas, it's really boring. Xiaohua read the Jade Archive very puzzledly. To be honest, this story had neither literary talent nor suspense. Although it was written by a female immortal who was as beautiful as a flower, other than the graceful handwriting, it could not be compared to the previous 47 stories. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not know if Suji had nodded and praised it back then. In any case, he had directly given Fairy Xingyue a thumbs up. However, after giving her a thumbs up, Jade Archive Xiaohua thought about how a female immortal had actually tried her best to make up a story in order to please others. Based on this friendship alone, Jade Archive Xiaohua was too embarrassed to give her a thumbs up. Therefore, Jade Archive Xiaohua crossed his ring finger and gave Fairy Xingyue a middle finger. Chapter 4684. After expressing his respect for Fairy Xingyue, Xiaohua had no choice but to read the Jade Archive again from beginning to end. This was because he really could not find any clues from the story. But when he saw the part about causing me to go crazy in an instant after obtaining a great secret, his heart skipped a beat. What kind of magic is this? How could it cause a fairy to go crazy in an instant? What great secret did you find out that made Fairy Xingyue so surprised? Xiaohua thought to himself. There are many ways to explore secrets, such as my karma hand, Su Ji's divination skills, and even the secret skills of Qingqiu Mountain. Su Ji only mentioned his divination skills, but he did not mention that Fairy Xingyu knew divination skills. However, Fairy Xingyu also said that she also knew many secret skills of the immortal world, such as the Delusion Breaker Magic Eye. Both the Punishment Palace and the Palace of Justice are famous institutions in the immortal world. In that case, Fairy Xingyu should also know the secret skills that Su Ji knew. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that Su Ji's divination skills came from Qingqiu Mountain and Fairy Xingyu did not know them. But this is unlikely. As for a secret technique that could cause a fairy to suffer cultivation deviation, it must be a secret technique that has extremely high requirements on the mortal body. My guess is that it should be an immortal technique similar to divination. Only such a celestial skill can let Fairy Xingyu know a great secret. As for what secret it is it related to the 3 continents? Xiaohua held back his doubts and continued reading. When he saw the words 6 tribes, Xiaohua's heart stirred as he instantly understood something. Tao sect, Confucian cultivators, Buddhist sect, Fei race, dragon race. I understand now. Fairy Xingyue is using the 6 tribes to refer to the various cultivation sects of the 3 continents. In other words, Fairy Xingyu must have known what realm the 3 continents were and thought of the unspeakable secret that even Su Ji did not know. However, Fairy Xingyu was a female cultivator. There were no secrets from a female cultivator. She really wanted to tell Su Ji this secret, but she knew the serious consequences of revealing it. Therefore, she couldn't help but write this story at the end of the scroll, which had been altered beyond recognition by her. Firstly, she had told the story to Su Ji. Secondly, she had revealed this secret to Su Ji in a different way. From the bottom of her heart, she felt much more at ease. Maybe Fairy Xingyue also felt that she couldn't live and used this method to tell Su Ji about her situation. Also, at that time, Fairy Xingyu must have been seriously injured and lost her mind. That was why she wrote the story. Later, after she recovered, she regretted it. That was why she did not use her magical power to preserve the scroll. She allowed the scroll to decay with the passage of time, concealing this secret in time. Presumably, even if she told me that this secret was in the moon-embracing palace, she would not believe that I would be so lucky to find this scroll and read this story from it, right? If so, a mountain, a group of people with magical powers, 6 tribes, and 5 abysses all have other meanings. No, how can it be 5 abysses? It should be 6 abysses. Only the 6 paths of abyss can separate the 6 tribes. No matter how the 5 paths of abyss are separated, there must be 2 tribes together. Jade Archive Xiaohua secretly speculated, could it be that this abyss has some other meaning? Let's not talk about the meaning of this abyss first. Let's just think of it as a prison. The 6 tribes are Taoist, Confucian, Buddhist, demon, dragon, and what if soul cultivators are included? Wouldn't there be 6 of them? However, if that's the case, Fairy Xingyu's writing is too obvious, isn't it? Well, these 6 tribes may not specifically refer to soul cultivators. Fairy Xingyu may not know that there are soul cultivators in the 3 continents. What about a group of people with magical powers? If we compare them to the 3 continents, this group of people can only be immortals. What about the mountain? We can only think of it as the immortal world. A tribe corresponds to one side of the mountain, which is to say, a sect corresponds to one's own immortal world. If we use these metaphors to replace the things in the story, erase the things that Fairy Xingyu hates, and think deeper, then this should be the real thing. Jade Archive Xiaohua thought about his own experience and the metaphors in the story. He had almost seen through the great secret that Fairy Xingyu had hidden in her heart. He thought to himself, in ancient times, Taoist, Confucian, Buddhist, and demon must have been together. The Dawn Rain continent and the 3 continents were also connected. They should be called the 4 continents. No, they shouldn't be called the 4 continents. The ancient records of Buddhist clearly state that there are 4 continents in the world. These 4 continents should be the 4 continents. However, Taoists developed too quickly and our strength surpassed the other 3 sections. We fought with each other for some benefits. The impact of this battle must have been too bad and attracted the attention of the immortal world. Therefore, immortals from the immortal world, the heavenly court, the Buddhist kingdom, and the demon realm came to the 4 continents and set up 3 innate divine restrictions in the West Ocean, separating the Dawn Rain continent from the 3 continents. Well, this immortal must not be an ordinary immortal. Otherwise, with Fairy Xingyu's ability, why would she not dare to say it? This immortal might be a celestial supremacy. Only a celestial supremacy could set up such a terrifying immortal formation. Thinking that the Great Meru Buddhist formation, the 5 Elements Destruction formation, and the Clear Song of Time Demon formation might have been set up by a celestial supremacy, Jade Archive could not help but feel bitter. No wonder Fairy Xingyu had said clearly that Xiaohua could not return to the Dawn Rain continent. It was because the 3 continents and the Dawn Rain continent were not 2 different worlds. Instead, there were 3 artificial immortal formations. Since it was man-made, it was not natural. It was rare to miss something, so Fairy Xingyu concluded that Xiaohua could not return to the Dawn Rain continent through these 3 immortal formations. Now that he knew the secret of the 4 continents, Jade Archive, Xiaohua naturally thought of a way to break this immortal formation. Unfortunately, no matter how many times he read Fairy Xingyu's story, he could not find any clues from it. Not to mention whether Fairy Xingyu knew how to break the immortal formation. Even if she knew, she would never reveal the method in this story. However, Jade Archive Xiaohua still did not give up. He read the scroll again from beginning to end, more than a dozen times. Then he raised his hand and let go of the decaying scroll. After thinking for a while, he made a decision. After taking the scroll out of the space, he shook it slightly. Whoosh! The entire scroll turned into flying ash and scattered around the futon. Since Xiaohua had obtained the secret that Fairy Xingyu wanted to tell him, this scroll had no value in existing. Instead of leaving it here and letting it be used against Fairy Xingyu, it would be better to make it disappear so that Fairy Xingyu could rest assured. Then, Xiaohua looked around, clapped his hands, and said in a low voice, "Senior Xingyu, this can be considered as destroying the evidence. I have not let you down. Unfortunately, you said too little. If you could tell me how to break the immortal formation, it would be perfect." After saying that, Xiaohua did not stay any longer. He turned around and returned to the pavilion. When he walked out of the pavilion, he was surprised to find himself on the other side of the garden. Princess Wuxia did not follow him. There were many palaces on the other side of the garden. Xiaohua did not dare to miss them. He continued to search through them one by one. These palaces were somewhat different from the previous ones. There were many things left behind. Xiaohua roughly looked at them and kept them in the space. However, when Xiaohua walked out of a palace door, he was once again faced with the beach. Xiaohua didn't find anything of value. "Xiaohua!" Princess Wuxia's voice came from not far away. Xiaohua did not dare to answer. When Princess Wuxia came closer, he asked tentatively, "Wuxia, why are you on the beach? I can't enter that pavilion. You also disappeared. Naturally, I could only wait in the garden." Princess Wuxia replied naturally, "But after waiting for a long time, you did not come out. I did not want to waste time, so I went back to search again." Saying that, she handed over a universe bracelet and said, "This is what I found. See if it is useful." Xiaohua took it and used his divine sense to check it. He smiled and nodded. "Whether it is useful or not, I am relieved that you are the real one." "I am naturally the real one. Could it be that you encountered something in the pavilion?" Princess Wuxia was shocked. Nothing. Xiaohua said with a smile, "This is Fairy Xingyu's moon-embracing palace. There should not be any special illusion. I was thinking too much." Seeing that Xiaohua was unwilling to say more, Princess Wuxia was not as curious as ordinary female cultivators. She only nodded and said, "It's good that you know. Shall we continue to search? Or leave this place?" "Let's leave," Xiaohua replied. Although Xiaohua did not say much, Princess Wuxia had already sensed it. She smiled and said, "Then, congratulations, darling Xiao." Alas, it is not good news. Although Princess Wuxia did not ask, Xiaohua did not intend to hide it from her. He replied, "It can even be considered bad news." "It can't be." Princess Wuxia was puzzled. "We worked so hard to find this place and spent so much effort to investigate. What we found is actually bad news." "Yes." Xiaohua looked at Princess Wuxia and explained, "Wuxia, this news is of no help to us in dealing with the world-destroying strange insect. However, you must remember that you cannot reveal a single word of what has happened here." "Don't worry about this." Princess Wuxia smiled and said, "This concubine still has this bit of awareness." "That's good." Xiaohua pulled Princess Wuxia's hand and flew her towards the pentagonal outline in the distance. He said, "Let's talk as we walk." Chapter 4685. Xiaohua and Princess Wuxia's figures fell into the outline of a pentagon. Seeing the light overflowing from the left and a heavy pressure falling down, Xiaohua understood that he and Princess Wuxia had been teleported out. Sure enough, after a short moment, a five-colored brilliance appeared in front of Xiaohua. When Xiaohua rushed into the brilliance, the heavy pressure around him lightened and he saw a blue sky in front of him. Hua. The sound of waves came from Xiaohua and Princess Zixia. Princess Zixia lowered her head to look, then a golden color appeared in her eyes. She looked into the distance for a moment and said with certainty, "This is still the West Ocean, but it's a lot farther from where we were before. It might be 200,000 miles away." But Xiaohua nodded and ordered, "Take me to the West Ocean Dragon Palace." However, without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, the sound of wind whistling suddenly rose high up in the sky. A valiant origin sense rose up from the sea surface in the distance and swept towards Xiaohua's location. It seemed as if a powerful sea race had discovered Xiaohua's appearance. Xiaohua coldly snorted as he released his divine sense to meet the attack head-on. However, wherever his divine sense passed, crackling sounds could be heard as countless tiny spatial ripples appeared. Moreover, when these ripples collided with each other, spatial bubbles that were barely visible to the naked eye could be seen rising. Although these bubbles were small, they contained an extremely powerful might. Boom! When the divine sense collided with the origin sense, the bubbles frantically exploded. Not only did the West Ocean surface set off waves that soared to the sky, even a powerful hurricane appeared high up in the sky, tearing apart the few clouds. Xiaohua Daoist Xiao? A voice that Xiaohua was extremely familiar with suddenly sounded. "How could you be here? How did you come here? How come I didn't find any trace of you?" If it was someone else who said this, Xiaohua would definitely snort disdainfully. Did he need to tell others where he was going? If he came here, would others definitely be able to find him? However, when this voice sounded, Xiaohua didn't seem to feel that the other party was asking too much. Instead, he smiled and said, "This Xiao came from a secret place. That place is rather special. Perhaps fellow Taoist can't sense this Xiao's traces. Hehe, if there's a place in the West Sea that I don't know about, it's probably where that person is." The owner of the voice had yet to appear, but the voice sounded as if it was right next to Xiaohua's ear. "That person has been using every possible means to search for the Star Moon Palace. He must be thinking of returning there. Now that you've come out, that person hasn't. Could it be that they've already gotten what they wanted?" At this moment, the seawater below Xiaohua suddenly rippled. The ripples formed weird grains which seemed to be in the seawater or the void where the seawater was. When the grains slightly twisted, a huge colorless shell appeared from the grains. Wasn't that colorful sea god shell? Ever since Xiaohua fought the rainbow sea god seashell in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, he hadn't heard any news of her. Later on, when Xiaohua learned that the West Sea Dragon King had gone missing, he naturally thought of Xiao Bai and the rainbow sea god seashell. However, Xiao Bai's strength was still shallow. It was indeed beyond his ability to become the Dragon King of the West Sea. Therefore, Xiaohua was only creating momentum for Xiao Bai and creating all the opportunities for him. He was waiting for the day when Xiao Bai would appear. At the same time, Xiaohua was also full of confidence in the rainbow sea god seashell. No one in the three continents understood the terror of the rainbow sea god seashell better than him. Since the rainbow sea god seashell could create a demon race great sage, creating a West Sea Dragon King shouldn't be too difficult. Xiaohua wasn't surprised by the rainbow sea god seashell's question. Since the Gochin Immortal Emperor and the Dipankara Archaic Buddha knew about Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji, how could the rainbow sea god seashell, as the ancestor of the Thousand Demons' sacred realm, not know about them? It was just that these people were trying their best to protect their secrets. If there wasn't any fundamental conflict of interest, they wouldn't touch the bottom line of others. Therefore, Xiaohua bowed and greeted. "Greetings, Señorita." To be honest, the rainbow sea god seashell's mood was quite complicated. It was impossible for her to not resent Xiaohua. However, her strength was so great that Xiaohua couldn't do anything to her. Especially that day, she had seen a lot of things from the divine punishment, which were unknown to the Gochin Immortal Emperor and the Mahavairakana Archaic Buddha. Therefore, when she suddenly saw Xiaohua in the West Sea, the rainbow sea god seashell greeted him with a hint of respect and reverence. Seeing Xiaohua bowing and greeting him as a junior, the rainbow sea god seashell didn't dare to neglect him. She hurriedly transformed into her human form, raised her grayish-white arm, and said, Taoist Xiao, you don't have to be so polite. You're already a supreme cultivator of the 3 continents. If we meet as a junior, Xiao Bai is my brother, and senior is the ancestor of the Jade Wave tribe. Plus, senior Bei Ming is the founding ancestor of my Shanghua Ming. No matter from which perspective, I have to call you senior. Without waiting for the rainbow sea god seashell to finish, Xiaohua interrupted her with a smile and answered in a low voice. The rainbow sea god seashell nodded helplessly and said, You humans are the most particular. I can't argue with you, so I'll do as you say. Junior Xia greets senior. After Xiaohua finished talking with the rainbow sea god seashell, Princess Xia also quickly came over to greet him. Xia? The rainbow sea god seashell had been paying attention to the princess for a long time. At first, it was surprised to see Xia coming over to greet him, but then it thought of something and smiled. Taoist Shao, Immortal Emperor Gochen sacrificed a lot for the Tao Gate. He sent this beautiful 9th princess to your side? Xiaohua smiled. He knew that the rainbow sea god seashell came from the royal family, so she was very proficient in all kinds of schemes. Moreover, the love between him and Princess Xia was very normal. In her eyes, she would definitely see some other colors and meanings. However, he didn't explain and only replied, Senior, I met Xia first. At that time, we didn't know each other's identities. The rainbow sea god seashell laughed and said, How can there be an unclear fate in this world? However, since the 9th princess of the Immortal Palace is greeting me as a junior, how can I come empty-handed? Saying this, the rainbow sea god seashell waved its hand and took out a small seashell. It handed it to Princess Xia and said, Xiao Zhenren and I didn't know each other until we fought. Moreover, I'm actually his senior in the sect. You'll know the reason later. This is my gift to you. I hope that you'll have a prosperous and beautiful family in the future. Junior thanks senior for the gift. Princess Xia was very obedient. She carefully received the seashell and glanced at it with her clear eyes. Xia, who was the 9th princess of the Immortal Palace, was also slightly surprised. The rainbow sea god seashell was very satisfied with Princess Xia's surprise and said, There are several things in the seashell that are useful for female cultivators. You should take them now. It's good for your appearance and lifespan. Yes, Junior thanks Senior. Princess Xia was full of smiles. She turned to look at Xiaohua and winked at him. Xiaohua also responded with a smile. He knew that Princess Xia had seen through his little scheme. He had met the rainbow sea god seashell as a junior, and as a senior, the rainbow sea god seashell had to give Princess Xia a gift. Moreover, the rainbow sea god seashell couldn't be too stingy in front of the 9th princess of the Immortal Emperor. The things it took out really satisfied Xiaohua. Xiaohua took out the Kunlun mirror and put Princess Xia away in front of the rainbow sea god seashell. Then, he asked the rainbow sea god seashell, Senior, you also know Fairy Xingyu and Suji? Does Fairy Xingyu know me? The rainbow sea god seashell asked. Xiaohua smiled and said, Senior Xingyu naturally knows you. Senior Su even came to the 1,000 Demons' sacred realm to save me. The rainbow sea god seashell frowned and said in a low voice, His strength is indeed beyond my imagination. After a moment, the rainbow sea god seashell came back to his senses and asked, What's the result of this trip to the Star Moon Palace? Xiaohua didn't answer and said with a smile, Senior, don't you already know? Why ask again? Alas! Hearing this, a trace of loneliness appeared on the 7-colored sea god shell's face. He sighed and said, Fairy Xingyu has worked hard for so many years and finally got what she wanted. All her hard work was not in vain. What about me? Hearing this, Xiaohua said in a low voice, Senior, could it be that you want to return to the Red Sea Domain? After leaving the Red Sea Domain for so many years, I naturally want to go back and take a look. In front of Xiaohua, the rainbow sea god seashell was no longer on guard and said with a groan, Of course, I also understand that the Red Sea Domain now is not the Red Sea Domain of the past. Even if I go back, I might get myself killed. It's better not to go back. Senior, they found the way back to the Red Sea domain all these years? Xiao Hua asked tentatively. The seven-colored sea god shell looked at Xiao Hua unhappily and said, "In my early years, I fled to the 3 continents and lived in fear every day. I was afraid that the sea race would chase after me. Who would think of finding the way back to the Red Sea domain?" Hee hee, I don't think so. Senior, you've been in the 3 continents for so long and you haven't thought of going home. Xiao Hua continued to ask. It's not that I haven't thought of going back. When I was free, I explored the surroundings of the realms, the rainbow sea god seashell replied. However, the realms of the 3 continents are very strange. There is no space passage to the outside realms in the nearby space. The turbulence in the realms that I entered has long disappeared, and I can't find any trace of it. Moreover, I'm different from Fairy Xingyu. She knows where she should go, but I don't. So if I want to go back, it's very difficult. Chapter 4686. The 3 continents may not have a way to the Red Ocean domain, but the 10,000 demon realm where Senior Bei Ming is in might have one. Xiao Hua smiled and asked tentatively, Senior, can you think of a way to go to the 10,000 demon realm? The 10,000 demon realm. The rainbow sea god shell squinted its eyes and smiled. I've heard about this from Little White Dragon and roughly know what happened to Bei Ming in the 10,000 demon realm. However, as of now, I haven't found a space passage to the 10,000 demon realm. If you find it, please tell me. I'll have to pack up and prepare to escape. Hiss. Hearing this, Xiao Hua gasped and exclaimed, Senior, could it be? You know those strange insects? The rainbow sea god shell opened its mouth and hesitated for a moment before speaking. I don't know if it's appropriate for me to tell you. Senior, please tell me. Xiao Hua said with a serious face. Now that things have come to this, no matter how powerful these strange insects are, what can be worse than the end of the world? Moreover, to be honest, I already have some ideas about how to kill these strange insects. Kill the strange insects? The rainbow sea god shell smiled coldly and looked at Xiao Hua. What's the use of killing 1 or 2 strange insects? Only by killing all the strange insects can the 3 continents truly escape the tragedy of the end of the world. Xiao Hua, you're really arrogant. You don't know what kind of enemy you're facing, and you don't know the origin of these strange insects. It's really, the ignorant are fearless. I really don't know the origin of these strange insects. Senior, please teach me. Xiao Hua asked honestly. When I was young, I liked strange things, so I often checked on Beiwen in the Lu Li Pavilion. That Beiwen recorded some strange things in the Red Ocean domain and even the nearby domains. There seems to be a record of these strange insects. The rainbow sea god shell explained, if I'm not wrong, these strange insects should be from the upper realm. They're called mayflies. They're the most humble existence in the upper realm. It seems that their biggest role is to devour the dust and waste of the upper realm. In the lower realm, this thing became an extremely strange insect. There was once a realm near the Red Sea domain called the River Domain. This Red Sea domain was plagued by this Red Sea mayfly and almost destroyed the world. What happened in the end? Why didn't they destroy the world? What method did you use to kill Fuyu? Xiao Hua couldn't help but ask. I don't know. The rainbow sea god shell shook its head and said, according to the records, the Jianghu region has already reached the end of the world. A few races inside want to escape, but the void is filled with mayflies. They can't escape even if they want to. However, in just one night, the golden light filled the entire river region. When the golden light disappeared, all of the mayflies also disappeared. Later on, according to a secret leaked out by a royal family in the Jianghu region, it was possible that some existence in the upper realm noticed the abnormality and took action to bring the mayflies back to the upper realm. Damn it! Xiao Hua suddenly cursed inwardly and thought, I understand now. Could it be that these mayflies were brought here by the Star Moon Palace's discussion? What boat from that river brought it to the 3 continents? However, Xiao Hua immediately shook his head again. That's not right. I saw Fuyu first, and Xianhong discussed the law later. How could these strange insects reach the 3 continents before the Star Moon Palace appeared? Of course, with this thought, Xiaohua felt as if he was struck by lightning again. His body shook violently and he completely understood that these strange insects must be Fuyu. They were also the black dots he saw in the spatial vein because the law of time on the Xianhong River couldn't be measured by common sense. Seeing Xiaohua like this, the rainbow sea god Shell frowned and asked curiously, "Taoist Xiao, what's wrong?" "Senior." Xiaohua thought for a moment and said very sincerely, "Junior feels that no matter where Senior came from, since you're already living in the 3 continents, you should do something for the 3 continents." "Do what?" The 7-colored sea god Seashell sneered and replied, "What can I do? I've even been deprived of the sea god's bloodline. What else can I do?" Hearing this, Xiaohua felt a little embarrassed. However, before he could say anything, the rainbow sea god Shell shouted hysterically, "The heavens are really unfair to me. Even if I've done something wrong, I've still been punished. My children have also been affected. But why is it that just when I saw hope, just when I saw the birth of the sea god's bloodline, the 3 continents have an apocalyptic warning? You don't know what these Fuyu mean, but how can I not know? Wherever the Fuyu you go, everything becomes barren. No resistance can escape from the Fuyu Yu. Forget it, so be it. In just 100 years, the 3 continents will become a dead zone. Who cares if it's alive or dead? Even more so, there's no need to care about its bloodline or inheritance." Xiaohua originally wanted to reveal some information to the rainbow sea god Shell, but seeing her so pessimistic, like when he entered the moon embracing palace, he knew now wasn't the time to persuade her. Thus, he looked around and said with a smile, "Senior, why did you come to the West Sea instead of enjoying your life in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm?" "I'm from the Shell clan. Of course I should be in the sea. Why would I go to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm?" Junior made a mistake." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Junior thought you were the ancestor of those great sages in the Great Sage Hall, so you should be in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. I really neglected the fact that Senior is from the Shell clan. That is, if possible, Senior, can you invite Junior to sit in Senior's palace?" "Of course." The rainbow sea god Shell nodded. "However, my palace is in the North Sea, not the West Sea. Moreover, if you want to go to the North Sea with me, you'd better wait until your good brother finishes his training in the West Sea." So that's how it is." Xiaohua smiled and bowed. "Junior thanks Senior on behalf of Little White." "Who needs your thanks?" The rainbow sea god Shell smiled coldly. "You're just brothers, but we're related by blood now." Although the rainbow sea god Shell's tone was cold, her words were obviously warmer. Xiaohua immediately climbed up the pole and cupped his hands. "Ioyo, then I have to congratulate you even more. I wonder where those little shells are? Quick, call them out and let me see." "What's there to see? My Shell clan is different from your human race. There's nothing cute about them." The rainbow sea god Shell curled its lips. That beautiful face was like an ink painting. Where did it look like an old ancestor? Xiaohua said with a smile, "No matter what, I'm still an elder. How inappropriate would it be if I don't take a look? If Little White finishes his training, it'll be hard for me to say anything when I see him." The rainbow sea god Shell responded, "You humans are so troublesome." With that, the 7-colored sea god Seashell waved the right shell. Whoosh! The shell split open space like a sharp sword, and then a gray brilliance turned into a large hand that reached into the void. A moment later, a 5-colored brilliance flashed, and Jade Wave's figure flew out from the brilliance of the water. Seeing Xiaohua and the rainbow sea god Shell, Jade Wave hurriedly transformed into human form and bowed. "Greetings, ancestor." "Greetings," Taoist shouted at seeing that Jade Wave was no different from the one he saw several decades ago, and her abdomen was still bulging. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly helped Jade Wave up and said with a smile, "No need to be so polite." "Who's being polite with you?" The rainbow sea god Shell said unhappily from the side. "Didn't you hear that Jade Wave was greeting me?" With that, the rainbow sea god Shell lowered its voice again and asked, "Where are the children? Have they been well during this period of time? Have they been frightened in any way?" Jade Wave pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Many thanks for ancestors' concern. The children are fine." With that, without needing Xiaohua to say anything, Jade Wave slightly opened the shell. No less than a dozen small shells and several small loaches flew out from inside. Whether it was the shells or the small loaches, they were all multicolored. Moreover, this multicolored color looked particularly dazzling in the sunlight and the water. After the small shells and the small loaches flew out, the multicolored color was like water ripples, following the movements of the shells and the small loaches, overflowing and supporting the shells and the small loaches. The dozen or so shells seemed to be a little shy. As soon as they flew out, they immediately surrounded the Jade Wave and didn't fly too far away. As for the several little loaches, they were extremely bold. After swimming a few times in the air, they rushed towards the western sea. Good. Unfortunately, without waiting for these small loaches to fly down, the rainbow sea god shell's benevolent voice sounded, "The wind and waves in the sea are too strong. It won't be too late to go when you're a little older." While speaking, the rainbow sea god shell stretched out a big hand of light and scooped up the small loaches. The little loach was obviously a little stubborn. It struggled a few times, trying to break free. However, when the big hand brought the little loach to the side of the seven-colored sea god seashell, several little loaches sensed the aura of the seven-colored sea god seashell. They scrambled to swim into the halo around the seven-colored sea god seashell. Looking at the small loaches happily swimming in the halo, the rainbow sea god shell's benevolent face appeared again, and its gaze actually followed the small loaches around. Xiaohua glanced at the multicolored shells, then glanced at the multicolored little loaches. He smiled bitterly and said, "Senior, I really can't see anything. These little things don't look like Whitey at all. They're normal." The rainbow sea god shell rolled its eyes and said, "It's just like when I look at you humans. They all look the same, I can't tell anything apart. Those children are the same, they look like they're carved from the same mold." Jade Wave had called Xiaohua Big Brother before, but later, she learned of the Fortune Gate strength and that Xiaohua was a supreme cultivator of the three mainlands. She didn't dare to call him Big Brother when Xiaobai wasn't present. She only said in a low voice, "Dao Master, these dragons are like this when they're young. In another 100 years, they'll grow horns, and at that time, you'll be able to see Xiaobai's appearance. As for these, from the perspective of the human race, these shells should be women. They'll look similar to this concubine in the future." Chapter 4687. Very good. Xiaohua smiles and takes out some rejuvenation pills from the space. He hands them to Jade Wave and says, "This is a pill refined by me. It's very useful for the transformation of the demon race. You might as well take it and give it to the children later." "Thank you, Taoist Master." Jade Wave is overjoyed. She hurriedly receives the jade bottle and says gratefully. After Jade Wave receives it, she thinks for a moment and says hesitantly, "Taoist Master, should this pill be taken separately or as a whole?" "It's better to take it as a whole." Xiaohua smiles. He seems to understand Jade Wave's meaning. Looking at her bulging belly, he says with a smile, "These pills are for the children. In the future, I will refine some more for you. Oh, you have to tell Xiaobai not to work too hard. Otherwise, I won't have any more pills for his children." Jade Wave is not a woman of the human race. She doesn't know too much about shyness. She proudly touches her belly and replies, "Darling Xiao is of the dragon race. He's full of energy. Taoist Master really has to work harder to refine more pills in the future." At this point, Jade Wave sneaks a glance at the seven-colored sea god shell and says in a low voice, "However, this time I'm not asking for it for myself." Sure enough, the seven-colored sea god shell says with a cold snort, "How can that lowly servant's child be worthy of Taoist Master Zhao's immortal pill?" Xiaohua is surprised and says in confusion, "Why? Is there a child? Is it Xiaobai's child?" Jade Wave hurriedly nods when she sees Xiaohua's attention. Xiaohua smiles and asks Jade Wave, "Since it's Xiaobai's child with someone else, you won't be jealous?" "What's jealous?" Jade Wave doesn't understand. It's just jealousy," Xiaohua casually explains. He doesn't know if Jade Wave understands. Who knows that Jade Wave says with a smile, "Darling Xiao is of the dragon race. He was born a powerhouse. How can he only mate with me in his life? Moreover, as a dragon race, the more offspring he has, the better. Why should I be jealous? In the future, if he controls the Western Sea Dragon Palace, there will be many dragons, sea race, and shell race that will mate with him. Heavens! Why is Little White's luck so good? Hearing this, Xiaohua's blood boiled. He almost looked up to the sky and roared, "Damn it, why can't I be a demon? If I were a demon, I would marry 8 or 10 little girls." Taoist Master. Just when Xiaohua's mind was restless, Jade Wave said in a low voice, "Do you want to see Xiaohua's other children?" Xiaohua hurriedly nodded and asked, "Where are they?" Ancestor. Jade Wave looked at the 7-colored sea god shell and cried out in a pleading tone. The 7-colored sea god shell let out a cold snort and a gray shadow appeared on the shell once more. The shadow turned into a giant hand that violently stabbed into the void and then casually pulled. Boom! A pillar of water rushed out from the void. Inside this wave, a conch lady stood up in a daze. Ancestor. When the conch girl saw the 7-colored seashell, she hurriedly got up and bowed. Then she bowed to Jade Wave and said, "Greetings to Mist." However, when she saw Xiaohua clearly, she was stunned. A layer of mist appeared in her eyes and the expression on her face showed that she wanted to get close to him but didn't dare to. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said with a smile, "This old man is Xiaohua, Taoist Master Xiao, not Little White Dragon." Taoist Master Xiao? The conch girl was shocked. She hurriedly transformed into her human form and bowed. "This concubine greets Taoist Master Xiao. This concubine has heard Xiaohua talk about Taoist Master before. You can't even tell your own husband apart and you still have the nerve." The 7-colored sea god shell sneered coldly. "Where are Xiaohua's children?" Jade Wave hurriedly said, "Taoist Master Xiao wants to see." The conch girl hesitated. The 7-colored sea god shell said impatiently, "I told you to bring them out, so bring them out." The conch girl's figure trembled, looking very scared. A gray halo appeared on the hard shell around her body. Then, several conches and several large loaches also flew out from the halo. However, these conches and loaches couldn't fly. They relied on the halo of the conch girl to fly in the air. What was special was that whether it was the halo of the conch girl or the conches and loaches, they were all gray. Seeing this, Xiaohua immediately understood why the 7-colored sea god shell hated the conch girl and her children. Xiaohua smiled faintly and took out a few jade bottles from his space. He handed them to the conch girl and said, "These are some pills that this Xiao refined. They may be useful for the transformation of the demon race. You might as well take them. When your child grows up, take them together." "Thank you, Taoist Master. Thank you, Taoist Master." The conch girl was very happy. After receiving the jade bottles, she said gratefully, "Go, take good care of the children. If there are any mistakes, this old one will hold you responsible." Seeing the conch girl take the jade bottles, the 7-colored sea god shell said coldly. He waved his hand again, imprisoning the conch girl and her children. With a flash of light, the conch girl and the conch girl disappeared. Seeing the 7-colored sea god shell's completely different attitude towards Bai Bo and the conch girl and her children, Xiaohua wanted to say something, but he still swallowed the words. On one hand, this was other people's family matter. Xiaohua couldn't butt in. On the other hand, they were of the sea race. As a human, he couldn't even listen to the word mating. There was no need to talk about others' secrets and habits. Xiaohua didn't want to talk about the children of the main wife and concubines, so he changed the topic and said, "Senior, this junior doesn't understand. Why is it that the dragon race doesn't have many children when they mate within the race, but after mating with other races, they have many children? This old one isn't of the dragon race. How could I know?" The 7-colored sea god shell's words choked Xiaohua. However, Xiaohua didn't care. He looked at Bai Bo again and said with a smile, "If nothing unexpected happens, Bai Bo will give birth to a few more children in a few days." Senior's bloodline will increase again. At hearing Xiaohua looking for something to say, the 7-colored sea god shell ignored him. It just waved its illusionary arm and grabbed at the naughty little loaches. These little loaches hid here and there, not letting the arm grab them. It was as if they were hiding from the seven-colored sea god shell. After a few times, the seven-colored sea god shell asked again, "Taoist Xiao, what do you want to say? There's no harm in saying it. Why are you hiding from this old one?" Cough cough. Xiaohua coughed and said with a smile, "This junior doesn't have anything special to say. It's just that seeing senior enjoying the happiness of family is really a blessing. If we can't avoid the disaster of strange insects, this happiness is a bit short. This old one wants to enjoy more happiness, but this old one also knows her own limits. This old one doesn't have the ability to stop this apocalyptic omen." The seven-colored sea god shell simply made it clear. "What if I have a way? Senior, can you help me with all your strength?" Xiaohua asked with a smile. "Of course I can." The seven-colored sea god shell answered without hesitation. "In the face of this apocalyptic omen, even if this old one has a deep hatred for you, this old one can't not consider helping you. After all, on these 3 continents, there are already children of this old one's bloodline. If I can help them find a way to survive, this old one is also willing." "That's good." Xiao Huan nodded and told the whole story of his participation in the Jade Pool gathering in full detail. In the end, he said, "Heterogeneous true qi is the natural nemesis of these strange insects. We only need to find the space passage to the Dawn Rain continent and bring the Dawn Rain continent's spiritual herbs and other things here. Then, we can exterminate these strange insects one by one." The seven-colored sea god shell frowned and listened to Xiaohua's words. Then, it bluntly shattered Xiaohua's hope. "What you said is too ideal. In this old one's opinion, it is somewhat unrealistic. First of all, there is no space passage to the outside world from the 3 continents. Unless you can find an ancient relic like the Star Moon Palace, then you can leave the 3 continents. Secondly, the strange insects are hidden in the void, and there are more than tens of thousands of them. Even if you can return to the Dawn Rain continent and get the spiritual herbs, how many spiritual herbs can you get to exterminate these strange insects one by one? This old one also told you clearly before that if you want to exterminate these strange insects, you have to leave no one alive. As long as a thumb-sized strange insect is left, it will definitely reproduce. At that time, there will be another apocalyptic omen. Senior, don't worry. After Xiaohua learned the truth about the 4 continents in the moon-embracing palace, he had been thinking about it. Now that he had a plan, he said with a smile, "This Xiao still has a secret about the 3 continents and the Dawn Rain continent that I haven't told you yet." "Speak." The rainbow sea god seashell said snappily. "Actually, from what this junior knows, the realm where the Dawn Rain continent is located is not another realm. It is a realm that is connected to the 3 continents. This realm should be called the 4 continents." Xiaohua explained. However, in ancient times, because the Tao sect, Confucian cultivators, Buddhism sect, and the demon clan were constantly fighting, the 4 continents almost collapsed and were destroyed. Therefore, the immortal realm, the heavenly palace, and the demon realm joined forces to set up 3 layers of innate divine restriction, separating the Tao sect of the Dawn Rain continent from the demon clan, Confucian cultivators, and Buddhism sect of the 3 continents. How is that possible? The rainbow sea god seashell was also stunned. She cried out in disbelief. The 3 continents were actually imprisoned by the immortal realm? Where did you learn this from? Xiao Huan naturally wouldn't tell her about the Star Moon Fairy. He said with a smile, "Senior, don't forget where this Xiao came from. Although this matter has been buried in the dust since ancient times and the supremes of the various sects may not know about it, this Xiaohua came to the 3 continents from the Dawn Rain continent. I don't need to know too many secrets. I can infer it from all kinds of clues. Oh, right, this Xiaohua has also met the Supreme Purity Palace Master and the Supreme Purity Palace Master of the Immortal Palace. Their clones have also been reincarnated to the Dawn Rain continent. When this Xiaohua tells them a little, they will definitely understand. Also, didn't Senior always want to ask where this Xiaohua obtained Bei Ming's body? Now, this Xiaohua can honestly tell Senior that this Xiaohua saw it when the Xiaohua passed through the Great Array. Presumably, Senior Bei Ming wanted to come to the 3 continents and accidentally encountered the passage of the Immortal Array. Give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and reward it. Thank you for all kinds of support. Chapter 4688. I see. I get it now. If that's the case, then it explains why there are no spatial passages around the 3 continents. Hearing Xiaohua mention Bei Ming, the 7-colored sea god shell's expression turned slightly better. He nodded slightly and said, "Actually, the edges of any world are where the laws of heaven and earth are condensed. These laws of heaven and earth can't be perfectly converged in many places, so it's inevitable that there will be some flaws that lead to outside of the world. I was originally wondering why the 3 continents didn't have such flaws, but now I understand that these flaws have been sealed." So, Xiaohua said word by word, "Since we can't find the spatial passage to the Dawn Rain continent, we might as well start from breaking the restriction. As long as this great formation collapses, the foreign true energy of the Dawn Rain continent will rush over, and all the strange insects will be killed without us needing to do anything." "You're right. And it's also the only way to kill the strange insects." The 7-colored sea god shell replied indifferently. "Unfortunately, you forgot. This is the innate divine restriction that separates the 4 continents. But it was set up by the immortals of the immortal world. How can you break it? What methods do you have to break it? And according to what I know, Bei Ming's strength should be far beyond yours, but he can't. Actually, Senior doesn't know. This great formation was set up in the ancient times until today. Who knows how many years it has existed? Time has always been the most fundamental weapon to break formations. Over the years, the spell formation had long since been eroded and destroyed by the mutation of true energy. It's just that we don't know." Xiaohua smiled and said, "Otherwise, how can I go from the Dawn Rain continent to the 3 continents? How can Senior Bei Ming find the passage? If we can find the flaw or the core of the array, we might be able to break the array." The 7-colored sea god shell chuckled and said, "Enlightened beings should discuss this with Immortal Emperor Go Qin and Mahavarokana revered sage, or find Aojia and the other dragons on Dragon Island. Maybe they can leave behind an ancient inheritance and know how to break the formation. If they want to find it, Senior should also find it." Xiaohua smiled and said, "In this world, who can surpass the 9th level of origin energy? Other than Senior, who else can it be? If I don't discuss it with Senior, who else can I discuss it with? Who told you that I have the ability to surpass 9th grade essence force?" The rainbow sea god seashell pursed its lips and refused to admit it. Gaochen Old Man knows, Mahavarokana Revered One knows, Aojia knows, this Xiao also knows. Xiaohua calmly gave him a high hat. Xiaohua, this old woman really admires you. You beat around the bush to pull this old woman into action, but did you know? I've already done enough for you." The rainbow sea god shell sneered as she covered her chest with her hand when she heard the laughter. "Senior." Xiaohua was greatly puzzled and asked curiously, "What other great things did Senior do that this Xiao doesn't know about?" At this point, Xiaohua was suddenly startled and cried out in disbelief. Could it be that unfortunately, before Xiaohua could finish, the rainbow sea god seashell waved its hand and said, "Jade Wave, you take the child and go first. I'll send the little white dragon back after he finishes his training in the wondrous lotus pool." There was no need for Jade Wave to reply. The rainbow sea god seashell sent her and the dozen or so multicolored shells and multicolored little loaches into the void. After the rainbow sea god seashell withdrew its arm, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the rainbow sea god seashell. He smiled and said, "When this Xiao heard the news of the West Sea Dragon King's disappearance, this Xiao felt that it was a bit strange. The West Sea Dragon King is a 9th grade essence force dragon. There might be some accidents in other places, but this is the West Sea. This is his nest, how could there be any accidents?" Moreover, after this Xiao saw the real monstrous insect king, this Xiao was even more puzzled. However, since the Dragon King of the East Sea, Ao Qian, was unwilling to agree to this Xiao's conditions, this Xiao was too lazy to think about it. But this Xiao had never thought that. The instigator was Senior. This Xiao really admires Senior. At this point, no matter how the Dragon King of the East Sea tries to stop him, the West Sea Dragon Palace will inevitably have a new master. Don't look at this old one like that. The rainbow sea god seashell was smug, but she still smiled and said, this old one did it on purpose. This old one brought Little White to the West Sea's wondrous lotus pool for training, and coincidentally came across the West Sea Dragon King and the monstrous insect king fighting. This old one only casually moved my pinky, that's all. My goodness. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Senior's pinky changed the West Sea's master. Who else in this world can compare to Senior? Don't say so much useless things. The rainbow sea god Seashell waved her hand and said, tell me, how did you negotiate with Ao Qian that day? Xiao Hua recounted what happened that day, and said in the end, this Xiao did not intend to make Ao Qian agree. In the future, when our fortune gate establishes a foothold in the West Sea, wouldn't the West Sea belong to our fortune gate? Ao Qian doesn't have the final say on who becomes the master of the West Sea. Isn't your fortune gate located in the soaring Dragon Mountain range? When are you coming to the West Sea? The rainbow sea god Seashell obviously didn't know about the Dao Gate. Let's not talk about this first. Xiao Hua smiled and said, what about the West Sea Dragon King's corpse and his Dragon Emperor? This is the most important thing. Why are you asking this? The rainbow sea god Seashell glanced at Xiao Hua and said, could it be that you don't believe this old one? It's not that I don't believe you. Xiao Hua smiled and said, this Xiao knows that Senior is an expert who hates the trivial matters of the mortal world. Now that you have to step into the mortal world for the sake of your descendants, this Junior is worried that Senior will be overworked, so this Junior wants to help Senior share the burden. Your words are better than a song. You think this old one can't see through your intentions? How could the rainbow sea god Seashell believe him? She coldly snorted and said, but you don't need to worry, this old one has already handed those things to Little White. That's good, that's good. Xiao Hua smiled and nodded. Since Senior has already made a decision, this Junior will not mention this matter again. Do as you wish. The rainbow sea god Seashell lazily waved her hand. If there's nothing else, this old one will go and rest for a while. After a year or so, this old one will release Little White from the wondrous lotus pool. Don't. Xiao Hua hurriedly blocked the rainbow sea god Seashell and said with a smile, this Junior hasn't seen Senior for a long time, this Junior misses Senior. I still want to talk to Senior more. Who would believe that? The rainbow sea god Seashell said with a smile, if you use this to deceive a human girl, you might succeed. But to use it on a shell race like this old one, you are really casting pearls before swine. Then this Xiao won't hide it from Senior. Xiao Hua straightforwardly said, because of the world-destroying strange insect's predicament, my Dao Gate has also obtained an opportunity to develop. The Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect have already agreed to let the Dao Gate in the West Sea. Xiao Hua recounted the Dao Gate's development in the West Sea to Huang Xiaolong and finally said, the reason I came to the West Sea is to find an immortal island or a blessed land for my fortune gate to build a good foundation for our future development. This Xiao didn't expect to run into Senior so soon after arriving at the West Sea. Maybe Senior was sent by the heavens to give this Xiao some guidance. How many of my descendants have your fortune gate's 200,000 troops killed? How can this old one look for a paradise for the fortune gate's disciples? The rainbow sea god Seashell sneered and said, this old one is not so magnanimous. Xiao Hua was helpless, but he still didn't want to give up and said, Senior, you can think about it. Previously, there were no fortune gate's disciples in the West Sea, and too many of the dragon race and sea tribes in the West Sea Dragon Palace were killed. If the world-destroying strange insect appears, your descendants will also suffer. My fortune gate's disciples came to the West Sea to solve your worries. You can't just watch as my fortune gate's disciples don't even have a place to stay, right? If you don't have a place to stay, then fly in the sky. The rainbow sea god Seashell coldly said, if that doesn't work, then go to the West Sea Dragon Palace. That place is big. Although this old one has agreed to lend you a hand, that is only to stop the world-destroying omen, it has nothing to do with your fortune gate's survival. Moreover, if you can't find a way to exterminate the world-destroying strange insect, the 3 mainlands will disappear in 100 years. So what if your fortune gate finds a so-called immortal island? It will still be swallowed by the world-destroying omen. Let me tell you, the world-destroying omen loves places with rich origin energy. The more you look for an immortal island, the easier it is for you to be attacked by the world-destroying omen. You might as well find a rundown place and deal with them as you wish, waiting for your death. The rainbow sea god seashell's body flickered with a dark gray light, and ripples appeared in the void around it. However, at the same time, more than a dozen thumb-sized world-destroying omen rushed out recklessly towards the rainbow sea god seashell's dark gray light. The seven-colored sea god shell coldly snorted and completely ignored these monstrous insects. Boom boom boom. As the monstrous insects swallowed the gray shadow and exploded at the same time, the seven-colored sea god shell's figure flickered and disappeared into the void. This old seashell is really stubborn. No wonder he ran into world-destroying omen the moment he stepped out. Xiaohua watched the seven-colored seashell leave and inwardly criticized. However, what this guy said also makes sense. That red mist monstrous insect likes to eat true qi the most. Now that it's looking for an immortal mountain or a paradise in the sea, it's just looking for trouble. It's better to find a reef to settle down. Give it a recommendation vote, collect it, or tip it. Thank you for all your support. Chapter 4689. However, a moment later, Xiaohua smiled wryly. Didn't the fortune gate come to the West Sea to kill those mayflies? They found a mountain range and blessed land and set up an ambush. Are they inviting the insects into the trap? Forget it, I don't need to worry about this matter. Xiaohua was a little irritated. He took out the Kunlun mirror and asked Princess Zixia to come out. After thinking for a moment, he said, Zixia, take me to the West Sea Dragon Palace. No problem. Princess Zixia quickly identified the direction and led Xiaohua to a certain place. After flying for a while, Xiaohua raised his hand and took out the Pegasus flying chariot. The Pegasus flying chariot could be considered an old monster with many years of experience. It raised its head and let out a long neigh that sounded like a dragon's roar. Hee hee. This concubine has long heard that darling Xiao has a Pegasus flying chariot, but I have never sat on it. Seeing it today, it is indeed amazing. Princess Zixia covered her mouth and giggled. Xiaohua was stunned and asked curiously, Really? You have never sat on it before? What do you think? Princess Zixia rolled her eyes and retorted. Hee hee, you are the Immortal Palace's princess. What kind of honor haven't you seen? Xiaohua couldn't remember if Princess Zixia had sat on it before, so he could only say embarrassedly, I was afraid you would laugh at me for being shabby, that's why I didn't dare to take it out. Princess Zixia knew that Xiaohua was being perfunctory, but she acted as if she didn't know. She held Xiaohua's hand and flew onto the flying chariot. She smiled and said, As long as it is something that belongs to me, no matter how expensive it is, I like it. Xiaohua accompanied Princess Zixia on the flying chariot. At this time, the Pegasus flying chariot did not need to be steered. It only pointed in a direction and flew off. The clouds in the sky gradually dispersed, and a scorching sun appeared. The countless rays of light were like pillars of light that pierced through the heavens and the earth, towering above the surface of the sea. The layers of clouds gradually took on various shapes in the wind. Xiaohua sighed and said, Such a beautiful scenery is actually going to be destroyed by those monstrous insects. It is truly a pity. Princess Zixia also sighed. We Confucian cultivators have developed on the hidden immortal mainland for God knows how many years. Our Confucian skills have greatly improved, and profound knowledge. These are more dazzling than natural scenery. What a pity, if we don't have an effective method to kill the mayfly monstrous insect, all of this will turn into nothing. When Xiaohua came out of the moon embracing palace, he still hadn't discussed the details with Princess Zixia. Now that he had some free time, Xiaohua told Princess Zixia the truth about the 4 great continents. Princess Zixia was dumbfounded. In the end, she shook her head and said, Impossible, impossible. The 4 great continents only existed within the teachings of the Buddhist sect. The 3 continents were indeed the 3 continents. How could it be the 4 great continents? Moreover, the Tao sect had long been jointly annihilated by us Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect during the ancient times. How could it possibly still exist in Dawn Rain continent? The other 4 continents that are similar to the hidden Immortal continent? Xiaohua smiled. Not to mention Princess Zixia, even he himself felt that it was inconceivable when he heard that the Tao sect had been annihilated on the day he arrived at the hidden Immortal continent. The Immortal Palace, Leying Temple, and Great Sage Hall had said since the ancient times that the Immortals and Buddhas had annihilated the Tao sect. This saying had been passed down for God knows how many years. Princess Zixia was even the princess of the Immortal Palace. She had been instilled with this idea since she was young. But now, she was suddenly told that everything she knew was false. The Tao sect still existed. Moreover, the Tao sect was previously more powerful than the Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist sect, and the demon race. How could she accept this? Xiaohua smiled slightly. He raised his hand and waved. The diagram of the 3 continents appeared on the flying carriage. He said with a smile, Zixia, look. To the north is the 1,000 demons sacred realm, to the east is the hidden immortal mainland, and to the south is the western paradise. The 4 seas have surrounded the 3 continents. As he spoke, Xiaohua pointed again. At the western ocean, a black line appeared. He said, this is the innate divine restrictions set up by the immortal world. This divine restriction and the other boundaries have separated the 3 continents into one boundary. And I, Xiao, was born outside of this divine restriction. As he spoke, Xiaohua pointed with his hand and the outline of the Dawn Rain continent appeared. However, I, Xiao, was only a small foundation establishment cultivator at that time. I didn't have a clear understanding of the entire Dawn Rain continent. Currently, I only know of the 3 cultivation countries and the country of sword cultivators. However, it is said that outside the Million Meng Mountains, there is a powerful cultivation alliance. They should be the backbone of my Tao sect. This place is the ruins of a Buddhist sect. There are 10,000 Buddhas inside and there are many secrets of the Buddhist sect. Zixia, look again. Aren't these 4 continents the Dongxing Divine Continent, the Apergodania Continent, the South Continent, and the North Continent of the 4 great continents? Xiaohua asked with a smile after the outline of the 4 great continents gradually became clear. Even if it is the 4 continents, it is still a coincidence. The shock on Princess Zixia's face gradually disappeared, but confusion gradually returned. She still shook her head. Xiaohua held Princess Zixia's somewhat cold hand and said, Zixia, do you still remember the Heaven's Heart? When Princess Zixia heard this, her delicate body trembled. She seemed to understand what Xiaohua wanted to say. After a moment, she asked with a trembling voice, you mean, your Heaven's Heart were all obtained in the Dawn Rain continent? Before I obtained your half of the Heaven's Heart, I already had 4 Heaven's Hearts. Xiaohua looked at Princess Zixia with some heartache. He somewhat understood Princess Zixia's panic and patiently explained, of the 2 Heaven's Hearts, one was obtained in the wilderness of the Dawn Rain continent. That place was originally a space that was about to collapse, and there was a scholarly cultivator inside. I don't know who this scholarly cultivator was, because after I obtained the Heaven's Heart, the space collapsed and everything ceased to exist. The other Heaven's Heart was obtained by Ji-Man in the Million Meng Mountains. She can be considered a scholarly cultivator's descendant. As for the other 2 Heaven's Hearts, I naturally obtained them in the 3 continents. However, I won't tell you where I obtained them. After all, it was already a matter of the ancient era. If I tell you now, it will cause some factions to have a dispute. Actually, just based on the 2 Heaven's Hearts I obtained from the Dawn Rain continent, I can almost be sure that the Dawn Rain continent was originally together with the 3 continents. It was only because of the Great War that my Taoist sect was separated from the scholarly cultivators, Buddhist sect, and demon race. If it was anything else, Princess Zixia would definitely be suspicious. However, when the Immortal Palace's most important Heaven's Heart and the 5 Qis unifications technique were mentioned, Princess Zixia slowly understood. If the Heaven's Heart was lost in the Dawn Rain continent, perhaps it could be said that someone took the Heaven's Heart and went to another realm. However, there were 2 Heaven's Hearts. How could there be so many coincidences? Only a natural chasm that separated the four continents could perfectly explain this matter. Moreover, Princess Xixia was born in the Immortal Palace. Although she didn't control the Tianji Palace, she was still an extremely important person among the true scholarly cultivators. She definitely knew more secrets than Xiaohua. Now that she thought about it carefully, how could a powerful Taoist sect be destroyed so easily? Just Xiaohua alone, just Grand Mist Ancestor alone was enough to give the Immortal Palace a headache. No matter what, a powerful Taoist sect wouldn't be so easily submerged in the passage of time. Chapter 4690. Princess Xixia didn't say anything. She closed her eyes tightly. After the time it took to eat half a meal, she opened her eyes and said with a wry smile, "My dear Xiao, this information of yours is really inconceivable. But after thinking about it carefully, it seems reasonable enough. If this news were to spread to the three mainlands, it would definitely cause a great uproar and even cause panic." Panic? Why would they panic? Xiaohua looked pensive. That's right, panic. Princess Xixia nodded. A kind of collapse of faith, a kind of collapse of trust. We have always been proud of our ancestors' achievements, and the glory of the Immortal and Buddha eradicating the Tao has always shone in the three mainlands. Now that the truth is out, everyone immediately understands that the so-called glory, the so-called pride, is nothing but a lie. We have been living in a lie for generations. Think about my reaction just now. Even I can't accept it. What about the other Confucian disciples? What about the other Buddhist disciples? Therefore, now is not the best time to announce it. Xiaohua probed. That's right. Princess Xixia answered. This matter is only suitable for the various sects' venerables to know, and only they can help you find the clues to break the grand formation. When the mayfly insect's crisis reaches its peak, presumably, the various sects' venerables will have the confidence to break the grand formation. At that time, we can announce this matter. Although at that time, everyone might not be able to accept it, under such a great calamity, everyone will still think about their own survival, and will minimize the impact of this news to the lowest. After that, Princess Xixia explained again, and only then did Xiaohua understand. Perhaps finding the truth was simple, but how to announce the truth to the public was an extremely difficult matter. A single careless action could pierce through the bottom line of a sect's trust. Moreover, if Xiaohua announced this matter publicly, it might cause people with ulterior motives to take advantage of it, making Xiaohua and the Fortune Gate public enemy. At that time, not only would Xiaohua be unable to defend himself, he would not have the chance to explain, and he would not have the opportunity to resist the mayfly insects. He might even start a real war with the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sects. And I understand. Xixia, it's all thanks to you. Xiaohua held Princess Xixia's hand and said with a smile, "With a virtuous wife like you, I'm relieved." Princess Xixia smiled sweetly and replied, "This kind of thing is the Immortal Palace's imperial technique. It's normal that you don't know about it." "Is there a imperial husband technique?" Xiaohua asked with a grin as he squeezed Princess Xixia's hand. Without anyone else around, Princess Xixia's shyness wasn't that bad. She also curled her lips and used her hand to pinch Xiaohua's hand. She smiled and said, "You'll naturally know in the future." Speaking up to this point, Princess Xixia looked into the distance again and said worriedly, "Darling Xiao, as far as I know, the Celestial Palace has never mentioned the four great continents. It's very likely that even Her Majesty herself doesn't know about this. What's your plan now? Let's not talk about finding a way to the Dawn Rain continent outside the realm for now." When Xiaohua heard this, he frowned and said, "Even people as strong as Fairy Xingyu and Su Ji said that there is no spatial passageway leading to the outer realm. Presumably, the Khanate spatial passageway has been covered by a large array. I'm afraid that the matter I discussed with His Majesty and the others will not succeed. Now, the plan is to break the array. This is an immortal array that covers the entire realm," Princess Xixia reminded. "Even if the venerables find clues, I'm afraid they won't be able to break the array. Didn't I say earlier that this array has been laid down for a long time? If it didn't work before, it might work now." Xiao Hua forced a smile and said, "Today's plan is to find clues to break the array first. If we don't even have a clue, how can we break the array?" The most frightening thing is, Princess Xia was more farsighted. The Jade Lake Conference has just ended, and the Venerables are planning how to deal with the red mist insects. If they gather for a discussion, it will be quite troublesome. If we let the disciples pass the message, we're afraid that the news will leak out. Heavenly Being, Lightning Taoist, and the others can naturally pass the message on my behalf. Xiaohua pondered. However, if they go, the Fortune Gate's disciples will encounter the red mist insects. I'm not at ease. How about this, Xia? You accompany me to various places and find the Venerables to discuss in detail. This concubine is willing to stay by this Xiao's side, rushing about for the survival of the 3 mainland's billions of people. Princess Xia's face blushed as she answered in a low voice. Seeing Princess Xia's shy face, Xiaohua's heart was moved. He reached out his right hand and wrapped it around Princess Xia's slender waist. Sensing Xiaohua's intention, Princess Xia couldn't bear to refuse. Her other hand also held Xiaohua's hand at her waist. "AI, what a smart female cultivator." Xiaohua sighed. His hand was held by Princess Xia, so he could no longer move freely. Princess Xia happily leaned on Xiaohua's shoulder. She didn't brush Xiaohua's face, but it also made him feel sweet. However, the two of them had just enjoyed a sweet meal when Xiaohua suddenly frowned. His divine sense seemed to have sensed something, and he muttered under his breath, "What time is it now?" Actually, at saying this, Xiaohua pulled his hand out from Princess Xia's and pointed in another direction, saying in a low voice, "Pegasus, go there." The Pegasus was very obedient. It didn't let out a long cry, and with a wave of its wings of light, it changed direction and rushed towards the direction of the sunset. The West Ocean was vast and boundless. Aside from the surging waves, there were also many places with reefs. At this moment, when the sun was setting in the west, its blood-red brilliance was sprinkled on a group of reefs that stretched for several thousand li. The reefs here were a little different from the others. Only a small part of them were colorful coral reefs. Most of them were yellowish-brown in color. Some of these reefs were like mountain peaks, and a lot of them were exposed to the sea. Some reefs were like sharp cones that pierced out of the water surface, covering many parts of the water. Of course, there were even more reefs that were like large and small stones that were not near the water surface, letting the waves slap them and causing them to foam like cotton wool. The brilliance of the setting sun was somewhat slanted downwards, and one could see several hundred miles away from the reef. Woo-woo. The waves churned, and the wind howled. A dragon several hundred feet long rushed out from the bottom of the sea. The moment the dragon rushed out, it immediately roared at the sky. In an instant, the sky changed color. The originally clear sky was covered by dark clouds, and even the blood-red sun was blocked behind the clouds. Wasn't this dragon the third prince of the Western Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Ing? Third prince, third prince. After Ao Ing, several more dragons flew out. The first one chased after Ao Ing and shouted, "Third prince, third prince." Chapter 4691. Ao Ing, the third prince of the West Sea Dragon Palace, snorted coldly when he saw the dragon chasing after him. He swung his dragon tail at the dragon. The dragon tail smashed down like a mountain. The dragon was stunned for a moment before helplessness appeared on his face. He did not dare to meet the attack head-on and allowed Ao Ying's dragon tail to smash down. Third prince. A few dragon generals saw Ao Ying's dragon tail like a scissor, and their expressions changed drastically. They hurriedly shouted from the side. Ao Ying suddenly snorted coldly when the dragon tail was about to hit the dragon general. He swept his dragon tail horizontally and brushed past the dragon general's body. The tail swept across the surface of the sea, and a reef that was a few miles in size was swept by the dragon tail. Boom! The reef was smashed into pieces by Ao Ying's dragon tail. Third prince. The dragon general did not look at the surface of the sea. Instead, he hurriedly flew over and said carefully, "Why are you so calculative over a momentary loss? If you are angered over such a small matter, wouldn't you fall into their trap? Is this a small matter? Go by?" It would have been better if the Dragon General did not mention it. Once he heard the Dragon General's words, Ao Ing flew into a rage and shouted, "I am the third prince of the West Sea Dragon Palace. They actually ordered me to patrol the sea. They are humiliating me as a patrol. I know how angry the third prince is." The Dragon General named Ao Bai said with a smile, "But they are now valued by the Dragon Island's Dragon Envoy and temporarily control the Dragon Palace. Their words are the orders of the Dragon Palace. We can't disobey the orders of the Dragon Palace." Another Dragon General next to him also advised, "Third Crown Prince, please calm down. Besides, their orders aren't only directed at Third Crown Prince. Fourth Crown Prince, Sixth Crown Prince, and Seventh Crown Prince were also sent to patrol the other 3 areas of the West Sea. Now that strange insects have appeared in the West Sea, if we do not strengthen the patrol, I'm afraid there will be an accident." "What accident can there be? Father has been missing for so long. The Sea Clan and Dragon Clan that followed him were all killed." Ao Ing said coldly, "Is there an accident worse than this? Although His Majesty the Dragon King is temporarily missing, the West Sea Dragon Palace is still there." Ao Bai advised again, "This is the foundation of the West Sea Dragon Clan. There can't be any mistakes in this foundation. The West Sea Dragon Clan naturally has a reason to patrol the sea. Your Majesty's Dragon Palace's Majesty the Dragon Palace's Dragon Palace." "But this Dragon Envoy is strange." Another dragon by the side asked curiously, "Last time, it was His Highness who led our West Sea Dragon Clan to Dragon Island to train. He should have a deep impression of His Highness. Why is it that when they arrived at the West Sea Dragon Palace, they are actually so close to them?" Ao Bai knew better. "Last time, I almost lost my life on Dragon Island. After coming out of the stacked Jade Legacy Land, I rushed back to the Dragon Palace and neglected the social activities on Dragon Island. Actually, it's not just me. The princes of the East Sea Dragon Palace and the South Sea Dragon Palace are the same. The 7th prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace even died in the stacked Jade Legacy Land." Ao Bai echoed, "That day, the 3rd prince was decisive. He handled the matter of the stacked Jade Legacy Land very well. After returning, he got His Majesty's approval. Thinking of that day, I'm so proud of the 3rd prince. His Majesty's heart is obviously biased." Alas, Ao Ing sighed again, "This king's luck is really bad." "Actually, it's not necessarily so." Ao Bai laughed again. "Don't humans have a classic story of enduring hardships to seek revenge? Your Majesty might as well imitate it." "Third prince, do you know the 10th prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Feng? That guy endured for 300 years and was ridden by a monk for 300 years. In the end, he achieved success and fame. Not only did he get the Buddha fruit of the Buddhism sect, he also got the approval of the Dragon King of the East Sea to officially enter the Crown Prince Long Su and have the chance to inherit the Dragon Throne of the East Sea? Disgusting! Disgusting!" Ao Ing shouted. "He was ridden by a human for 300 years. Don't mention this in front of this king." "Ha!" Ao Bai laughed. "Of course, Ao Shun's comparison is inappropriate. Ao Feng naturally can't be compared with the 3rd prince. He's just an illegitimate 10th prince, while the 3rd prince is the top successor. However, Ao Shun's words are reasonable. The 3rd prince has to listen to him. We'll endure this difficult period for the time being and minimize the influence of the Dragon Envoy. With the 3rd prince's reputation in the Dragon Palace, how can the 1st prince be his opponent? Won't the Dragon Throne of the Dragon King of the West Sea belong to the 3rd prince sooner or later?" Ao Ing smiled coldly and said, "This king has never taken Ao Qian seriously. He's too confident. He thinks that he's the 1st prince and is the closest to the Dragon Throne. He doesn't listen to father in many places. In the palace, there are other dragon palaces of the other 3 seas. He doesn't have many friends. If not for the appearance of the Dragon Envoy, he would have." Seeing Ao Ying's confidence, Ao Bai smiled bitterly and said, "Third prince, times have changed. You must not be careless. After all, the 1st prince is the 1st prince. He has the moral high ground. The dragon envoy of the Dragon Island has no better choice but to rely on the first prince. I know. Ao Ing glared at Ao Bai and said, "Am I not building a good relationship with the first prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace, Ao Xiang? He's temporarily staying in the Dragon Palace of the West Sea under the orders of the Dragon King of the East Sea. Isn't it a good opportunity for him to restrain the dragon envoy of the Dragon Island?" That's good, that's good. Ao Bai nodded and smiled. With the third prince's breadth of mind and strategy, you're the real master of the Dragon Palace of the West Sea. We all understand this. Actually, third prince, I've forgotten. The most important thing is not within the Dragon Palace, but outside of it. Ao Shun was not to be outdone. He suggested in a low voice, "What's fought for in the Dragon Palace is prestige. What's fought for outside of the Dragon Palace is real power." The first prince is really stupid. He might have really forgotten about this and sent the few princes who are not on good terms with him out to patrol. He has a plan in mind to send the princes into danger. But at the same time, there are opportunities within danger, especially your highness. The sea region you're patrolling is not far from where His Majesty the Dragon King went missing. If you get the dragon throne of the West Sea Dragon Palace, why do you have to care about the dragon envoy of the Dragon Island and the first prince of the East Sea Dragon Palace? Why do you have to be calculative with the first prince?